A lone warrior sighs, his armored hand on his forehead as he stares up at the sky. He can't believe they are actually serious about this, because above him, a colossal purple dragon dominates the sky. Its shadow falls over the forest, a terrifying beast of legend, and it's not just one. The sky boils with an entire horde of dragons, an army sent for a single man. He understands now the overwhelming power of sheer numbers, but he shows no fear, only resolve. Green energy sparks around his armor as he decides to give them a proper welcome. With a look of sheer determination, he declares it's time to begin, and a gigantic stone hand materializes in the sky behind him. The being takes its full form, orchestrion, a massive steel golem crackling with immense power, ready to even the odds. The story flashes back 15 years to a time when a beautiful and terrifying woman became the Demon King, holding entire nations in the palm of her hand. Her greatest weapon was an overwhelming charm, a skill so potent it could dominate any man, regardless of his will or his race. Even the world's greatest heroes fell before her, their hearts and loyalties captured, turning them into her devoted servants. Her control was absolute and inescapable, a power that lingered long after she was gone, leaving a legacy of broken wills. The world had tried to fight back by creating exceptional warriors, but against her unstoppable power, these saviors simply became her strongest minions. Now, with the Demon King finally gone, the world's leaders are left to decide the fate of these powerful exceptions, wondering how to manage them in a time of peace. In the present day, we find ourselves in the grand palace hall of the Diamante Kingdom, where a crowd of commoners anxiously awaits their fate. A portly nobleman's face twists with rage. He screams at the assembled workers, telling them they are all fired. Turning his back, he proudly proclaims that a royal palace as noble as this one should only be staffed by the most competent people. The workers look on in despair as he insists that only carefully selected nobles are fit to serve the kingdom. Among them stands the young man from the battlefield, now dressed as a commoner. The nobleman explains that the only reason they were ever allowed to work here was because of a law that is no longer relevant, now that the Demon King is defeated. He roars at them with pure contempt, telling the commoners they have no right to be here and ordering them to get out. But then, a single hand rises from the crowd. The young man has a question. The nobleman is stunned by this act of defiance, angrily demanding to know who dares to interrupt him. The young man simply asks a practical question. What should they do about the handover of their duties to the new staff? He calmly explains that without a proper handover, there will be chaos. But the nobleman explodes with fury, questioning how a mere commoner dares to challenge the authority of a ducal head. The nobleman clutches his head in frustration, complaining about the impudence of commoners. He waves a dismissive hand, stating that he couldn't care less about such a low-level problem as the young man watches in silence. He finds the very idea of commoners teaching nobles to be completely absurd, shouting that it's something they should figure out on their own. Another worker, a woman with pointed ears, asks for clarification, wanting to know if he truly means no handover is necessary. The nobleman points at them, ordering them to gather their personal belongings and leave immediately, reminding them of the law that protects their possessions. The young man's face is cast in shadow as he quietly confirms that he understands the order. No handover. His eyes narrow with a cold, hidden intensity. He agrees that they will take their things and leave as instructed. He gives a polite bow, thanking the nobleman for everything before announcing his departure, saying he's a very busy man. As he turns to go, another person rudely shoves him aside, telling him to get out of the way. Standing in the crowd of dismissed workers, the young man lets out a long, weary sigh. He reflects on people who think giving orders solves everything, people who fail to grasp the importance of a proper transition. Then, with a tired look, he holds up a small, shimmering object, and a strange smoke begins to swirl around him. The entire hall erupts into chaos. Everything is ripped from its place and flies toward him. He remains perfectly calm in the swirling vortex, simply adjusting his vest. He looks at the small cube in his hand, a magical tool he calls his item box. It unleashes a powerful whirlwind, sucking all the room's contents into its magical storage. When the chaos subsides, he stands alone in a completely bare, destroyed hall where even the floor tiles have vanished. He stands in the vast emptiness, the magical smoke slowly dissipating around him. Scratching his head, he decides it doesn't matter, since he finished his golem operation tests anyway. He realizes that now that he's been fired, his royal permission is gone, and he can no longer use the special antenna. As he walks down a corridor, he considers the consequences. His golem's control range is now only 3 meters, which is dangerously short. But he reassures himself that sacrificing range for much faster processing speed was the correct strategic decision. He pulls out his old staff ID, showing his name, Horace. He thinks that if any trouble comes up, he puts the ID away, deciding he'll just have to deal with problems as they arise. He approaches a cluttered storeroom, his mind already on his next move. His new mission is clear. He will search for the best possible materials to construct a new golem. Elsewhere, the nobleman Zalte relaxes in the king's court. Being fed grapes like a pampered child, King Barzil of the Diamante Kingdom notes Zalte's good mood, and the nobleman smugly replies that he feels refreshed after getting rid of some annoyances. The king prepares for a meeting with the hero, while his attendant reminds him not to make a bad impression. A knight bursts in, announcing that the teleportation array is now operational. With a brilliant flash of light, the royal party is instantly transported. The king stumbles, still not used to the disorienting feeling of teleportation, but Zalte just smiles, telling him he will get used to it. Zalte then whispers a secret ambition to the king. Though the World Council controls the teleportation system now, soon it will be theirs. The king listens to this treasonous plot with a thoughtful, serious expression. He and Zalte, flanked by guards, proceed towards the great doors of the World Council chamber. The massive doors swing open, revealing the grand assembly inside. The hall is packed with leaders from across the world, all gathered for this momentous occasion. King Barzil enters and gives a regal wave to the powerful figures in attendance. An announcer calls for silence as he prepares to introduce the hero to the council. He thanks everyone for their patience as the hero takes the stage. A woman with long blonde hair and impressive armor appears. Zalte is impressed, recognizing her as the hero from the rumors. A wave of shock and awe spreads through the entire assembly as they lay eyes on her. Her gaze is sharp and powerful, her eyes holding an incredible intensity. King Barzil is completely captivated, sweating and whispering that this must be the hero. Far from the grand halls of power, the story shifts to the quiet, peaceful calcite village. He sits alone at a table, eating a meal. He reflects that now that he is finally free, he can pursue his true passion. But he knows it won't be easy. His ambitious project will require at least 10 years of dedicated research. He sighs in frustration, feeling the weight of his task as the world continues on around him. He forms a new plan. He will travel to the rare stone market near the Grand Ore Vein to find what he needs. He rests his head on the table, feeling a moment of exhaustion before he begins his new journey. A friendly voice suddenly breaks his concentration, asking why he's daydreaming in such a peaceful place. Horace looks up from his food, surprised by the interruption. A smiling young man appears, holding the reins of a horse and offering a casual greeting. He kindly tells Horace that he's happy to listen if he needs to talk about his troubles. Horace explains that after leaving a difficult job, he's now faced with the time constraints of his own personal goals. He stares off, lost in thought, admitting that he's under a lot of pressure to achieve what he wants. He confesses that it feels like his luck is constantly being put to the test. He apologizes for rambling, but the young man just smiles, saying that at least he's self-aware. The young man then asks if Horace is heading to the treasure capital, Lapis. Horace confirms that he is, and the young man lights up, revealing they are both heading to the same destination. Horace takes a bite of his food, considering this convenient turn of events. The man introduces himself as a merchant and says, Lapis is the best place to find all kinds of metals. He adds that Horace could even trade the rare metals from the nearby Grand Ore Vein there. Horace suddenly stops and inspects the merchant's cart, pointing out that the axle looks dangerously old. The merchant laughs, impressed by his sharp eyes and confirming that the axle is indeed in bad shape. Horace explains that he knows about such things because he was involved in the technology behind them. The merchant looks at him with newfound curiosity, surprised by his expertise. The merchant's horse simply twitches its ears, listening to their conversation. The merchant asks Horace how he plans to travel to Lapis, as it's a very long journey. Horace admits that he has no transportation and was just planning to hitch rides on shared carriages. The merchant smiles, seeing an opportunity. He offers to give Horace a ride all the way to Lapis. The only condition is that Horace must use his skills to fix the broken cart axle. Horace confidently accepts the deal, introducing himself and telling the merchant to leave it to him. The merchant, Ginji, extends his hand, happy to have a deal and to have met his new travel companion. But just as they are about to shake hands, the ground begins to tremble violently. Ginji looks around in terror, shouting and asking what is happening. A villager screams at Horace, asking where he's going as he suddenly bolts from the table. He runs straight towards the chaos, where a skeletal dragon is emerging from a cloud of dust, ready to face the danger head-on. As he gets closer, Horace freezes. He recognizes the faint purple scales on the dragon's bones and can't believe his eyes. Then he sees the magical chains wrapped around its body, chains he knows all too well. He gives a tired, humorless laugh, finding it absurd that a dragon would appear in a place like this. A flamboyant nobleman named Yuriev leaps forward, boasting that he will take care of the beast. Horace watches, unimpressed, wondering if the man has any chance at all. The dragon roars, laughing at the foolish humans and telling them there is no running. One of Yuriev's mages prepares a spell, holding a glowing magical stone. Horace yells from a distance, warning the foolish group that they are getting too close and asking if they are trying to get killed. His attention is suddenly pulled to a burning house where a woman is crying that her daughter is trapped inside the inferno. Without a moment's hesitation, Horace sprints towards the flames. A villager shouts after him, trying to stop him from running into the blaze. But he smashes through the burning doorframe as the villager screams that he'll get himself killed. Inside the smoke-filled house, Horace calls out, announcing that he is here to help. He feels the intense heat as he searches, but there is no response from the child. He shoves a heavy burning bookshelf out of his path, determined to find her. He pushes deeper into the fire, calling out for the girl again and again. Through the smoke, he finally spots a small figure lying on the floor. He rushes over, shocked to find a little girl unconscious among the debris. He quickly checks on her and is relieved to find she is still alive, just passed out from the smoke. He catches his breath, preparing to lift her and escape the collapsing building. He gently picks her up, wondering if he has enough time to make it out safely. He pulls out a small flask of magical liquid, thinking fast. He quickly pours the entire contents of the flask over the girl. A shimmering bubble of protective water instantly forms around her. The magical shield protects her from the fire, smoke, and falling embers. Holding the rescued girl, Horace steels himself for the escape. But then, he hears a dangerous creaking sound from above. He looks up in alarm as the entire roof begins to crash down. Outside, the dragon continues to mock the villagers, asking if they've given up yet. Someone screams in horror, realizing that the roof has just collapsed on top of Horace. Ginji shouts his friend's name in panic, but through the rubble, Horace's eye remains open and determined. In a split second, he twists his body, shielding the child from the falling timbers. With a burst of strength, he pushes the wreckage aside and rises from the flames, the girl held safely in his arms. He gently places her on the ground, away from the fire. It's only then that we see his armored arm was severed in the collapse, left behind in the ruins. But he isn't finished. He turns back to the fire, still holding the girl. He reaches back into the flames and pulls out a small, soot-covered dog. With a touch of his magic, the dog is instantly cleaned and safe. Horace walks out of the inferno carrying both the child and her pet, as Ginji and the villagers stare in stunned silence. He calmly tells Ginji that the girl is fine. She just fainted from the smoke. The little girl, Nasha, sleeps peacefully in his arms. Ginji is speechless, thinking that what he just saw was truly amazing. Nasha's mother runs to them, crying out her daughter's name in relief. Horace hands the child back to her mother, who thanks him. Again and again, overjoyed. Ginji looks at his new friend with awe, deciding it's probably better not to ask too many questions. With the rescue complete, Horace turns his attention back to the ongoing dragon fight, sighing at the pathetic display. Ginji explains that while the mages knocked the dragon down, the nobleman is now just uselessly hitting it. They watch as his attacks do absolutely nothing, not even scratching the dragon's hide. Yuriev, however, poses dramatically, boasting about his own magnificent swordsmanship. Ginji asks for Horace's opinion, and he replies with a bored expression that he has a very bad feeling about this. As if on cue, Yuriev's sword shatters against the dragon's tough scales. The dragon has had enough. It lets out a deep growl and begins to rise to its full height. Yuriev stares in horror as the magical chains binding the dragon suddenly snap apart. The dragon lunges forward with incredible speed. It sends Yuriev flying through the air with a single, powerful swipe. He lands in a pathetic heap on the ground, completely defeated. Horace calls him a disgrace, though Ginji admits that watching the arrogant nobleman get what he deserved was rather refreshing. Horace cracks his knuckles. He says he's not in the mood for this, but it seems he has no choice. The dragon turns on the terrified mages, preparing to finish them off. But something small and heavy suddenly smacks it hard on the side of the head. Horace watches as his projectile finds its mark, his expression serious. He had thrown a solid gold ingot with enough force to get the dragon's attention. He runs towards the beast, explaining that he can't allow it to be reused, as that would cause a major problem. The dragon roars in fury, turning to face this new, more dangerous opponent. Horace draws his blade, ready to end the fight quickly and efficiently. He leaps into the air, diving towards the dragon's head with blinding speed. His strike connects in a massive explosion of force, kicking up a huge cloud of dust. Horace lands gracefully as the dust begins to settle. He stands in a pile of gold coins and bars that came from the defeated dragon, holding a shiny ingot in his hand. He decides that this treasure should be more than enough to cover the damages to the village. Later, as he and Ginji ride away in the cart, Ginji asks if it was really okay to leave all that gold behind. Horace reassures him that it's fine, though Ginji is still worried about leaving the coins. He explains that carrying so much gold would be a hassle, which makes Ginji think he is far too kind. Ginji smiles, realizing Horace left the money to help the villagers rebuild their burned homes. Horace, reading a book, adds that he's pretty sure the girl's father is still around, so the family won't be alone. He looks up, his expression serious, acknowledging how devastating it must be to lose your home. Ginji looks at the road ahead and quietly agrees. As they continue their journey, Ginji tells Horace he doesn't plan to make any detours, and Horace says that's fine with him. Back at the World Council, the hero, Langia, is called to give her official report. After she finishes, King Barzil tells her that he has one small request for her. Nearby, the young Princess Lucia of the Dragon Kingdom watches nervously. Langia speaks, not for herself, but on behalf of her master, Horace, the man who trained her and made the victory possible. She then makes a shocking request. She asks the council to grant her master the right to marry multiple people across different nations. Far away, Horace continues to read his book, completely unaware that he is the subject of this bizarre political demand. The entire council chamber is struck silent, unable to process what they just heard. King Barzil, stressed, wonders what kind of man could inspire such a strange request from the world's hero. Langia explains that her master is a commoner, but he is also the strongest Golem master in the world. She then reveals that he was recently working in the Diamante Kingdom, which sends a shock through King Barzil and Zalti. Zalti panics, realizing that the legendary figure was working right under his nose. He breaks into a cold sweat as he remembers firing all the commoner staff, praying Horace wasn't among them. Langia's eyes narrow as she watches their reactions. She knows exactly what happened. She coldly confronts the king, accusing him of firing her master. Zalte hides his face, stammering that he had no idea. Langia sighs, complaining that her master is always too secretive, and she only found out where he was because of a recent letter. King Barzil glares at Zalte, who can only offer a pathetic, nervous smile. It's explained that due to the war, the World Council had urged all nations to appoint talented commoners to key positions. Langia states that many countries embraced this idea to gain strength, but it seems the Diamante Kingdom did not. Zalte trembles under the hero's intense, judgmental gaze. Langia then changes her request. She says that considering where her master is heading, she needs civil rights for him to access a specific location. She turns to Princess Lucia, asking her to act on behalf of her sick father. The princess stammers as Langia makes her new demand: full citizenship for Horace and all members of his team. She clarifies that this citizenship is needed for the treasure capital, Lapis, so he can access the rare stone market. She leans in close to the terrified princess and declares this is her rightful reward for defeating the Demon King. King Barzil slams his fist on his throne, enraged by her audacity. He roars that he will absolutely not allow it. The crowd whispers in awe about Langea's team, a group of powerful and good-looking commoners who defeated the Demon King. Princess Lucia is horrified, thinking it's absurd to hand over such valuable access to another nation. The king's eyes burn with rage, especially at the thought of giving anything to the Dragonstone Kingdom. Langea's voice cuts through the air, warning the king not to get cocky. Princess Lucia flinches, startled by her sharp tone. The king tries to regain control, asking Langea what she is trying to accomplish. Langea raises her hand, her meaning clear. When she says she wants something, it is a demand, not a request. The king becomes desperate, trying to find a way to appease her by offering a deal for Horace. He correctly guesses that what Horace really wants is access to rare minerals, and Langea's silence confirms it. King Barzil boasts that his kingdom is the greatest, promising to use their trade networks to get Horace anything he needs. He begs her to reconsider, suggesting that Horace should be granted special rights within their kingdom instead. Langea turns her back, coldly informing him that his king's greatness is an illusion. She explains that the only reason his kingdom seems prosperous is because it's filled with refugees from the war. She challenges him to deny the truth, and he has no answer. Langea reveals that the Diamante Kingdom was only able to support those refugees because of her master's staff golems, which could do the work of 10 men. The king is speechless when she reveals that Horace can control over 500 of these golems at once. She reminds him that despite this incredible contribution, his kingdom fired all of those essential staff members. And now, she drops the final blow. His kingdom is about to face financial ruin, so why would her master ever want to stay? She explains that the special wartime laws regarding loans are about to expire, which will spell disaster for him. During the war, lenders were forced to be generous, but now it is time for everyone to pay their debts. She points out that many wealthy nobles took advantage of this, accepting aid they didn't even need. The king seems to think this is a minor issue he can ignore. Langea scoffs at the idea that he can just use his power to make the problem go away. The nobles in the crowd begin to whisper nervously among themselves. She reveals her trump card. Her hero community has already bought up all the debt bonds from the lenders. The king's face goes pale with shock. Langea informs him that her community is also a lending operation, and their single biggest debtor is now the Diamante Kingdom. The king starts to sweat as he realizes the depth of the trap he's fallen into. She points at Zalti, revealing that he personally has the largest debt of all, so large he could never hope to repay it. The news is too much for Zalti. He shrieks and faints on the spot. Langea adds that the repayment terms will be generous, with low interest rates. She looks down on the entire assembly, telling them to take their time paying it back. She now owns them all, but there's a final twist. Of all the nations, only the Dragonstone Kingdom is actually repaying its debts. She holds up her sword, the Dragon Silver Sword, and reminds everyone it was crafted in the Dragonstone Kingdom. The king is utterly defeated. Langea asks if it isn't obvious which nation is the better ally. She repeats her request for citizenship, and the king can only sit in stunned silence. Princess Lucia rises and officially grants Horace and Langea citizenship in the capital city of Lapis. Langea bows politely, thanks the princess, and announces that she will now take her leave. Princess Lucia watches her go, still reeling from the incredible display of political power. As Langea walks away, she glances back one last time. She delivers a final, chilling warning. If anything happens to Princess Lucia, there will be consequences. We are now in the beautiful treasure capital, Lapis, a city of grand towers. Langea sits alone in a government building, letting out a long, tired sigh. She waits patiently on a bench, looking exhausted from her political battle. Suddenly, she hears a familiar voice. Her face lights up with pure joy as she sees Horace standing there. She leaps up and throws herself into his arms, crying out his name in happiness. Horace is completely caught off guard by her affectionate hug, his face turning red. She holds on tight, overjoyed to finally see him. He notes how different she is from her usual serious self. He tells her he still needs to finish some paperwork, but she just beams, saying he's special and doesn't have to. She proudly shows him the official documents, revealing she has already taken care of everything. He takes the papers, amazed at her speed, as she grabs his arm and tells him it's time to go. He asks where they are going, and she excitedly announces they are heading to their new mansion. She explains that she got them a mansion through her organization, and happily declares that they will live together. Horace is flustered as she drags him away, telling her a young girl shouldn't say such things. They arrive at an enormous mansion. Langia proudly calls it their love nest, while Horace just stares, stunned by its size. At the door, they are greeted by a woman in a maid's uniform who welcomes them and says she has been waiting for the master. The maid, Terrace, smiles warmly, happy to finally meet Horace. She tells him she's been looking forward to the day they could all live together, under one roof. Terrace offers him a tour of his incredible new home. She leads him up a magnificent, sweeping staircase. Horace notices how empty the mansion is, and Terrace explains that for now, it's just the three of them. She adds that while the house is clean, there is still much to be done to get it organized. She then shows him the best part, a fully equipped workshop, built just for him to create his golems. Horace is overwhelmed by their generosity. Langia simply says it's the least they could do for him. He picks up a piece of rare metal, amazed to see they have provided every kind of material he could ever need. Terrace and Langia proudly say that now he can finally focus on his important research. He holds a rare crystal, filled with gratitude. He knows that getting citizenship in a workshop like this would normally have taken years. With a warm smile, he pats both of them on the head and thanks them, and they beam with happiness. Later, he examines a rare metal ingot, wondering just how much all of this must have cost. Langia casually tosses a gem in her hand and tells him it was just pocket change, leaving him speechless. He decides it's probably best not to think about it and just accept their incredible gift. Sometime later, a young woman with her hair in twin buns arrives at the grand mansion. She stands before the gates, ready to witness the true power of the hero's master. This is Ederica, the court alchemist, and she complains to herself about the ridiculous size of the mansion. She rubs her tired eyes, grumbling that she's been walking forever just to get from the gate to the house. A small creature with her tells her not to be nervous, but Ederica puffs out her chest, saying the hero's mentor should be the one who's nervous. In a flashback, we see Ederica asking Princess Lucia about her mission. The princess dramatically declares that she is to conduct an investigation. She explains that since they are accepting the hero's community, they must evaluate them to ensure they can be trusted. The maids listen in as the princess expresses her concerns. Ederica panics, thinking she has to investigate the entire group of powerful heroes, but the princess clarifies that she only needs to investigate one person, Horace. She explains that it's because he is the hero's master, the one at the very top. She has heard he is also a golem master, which makes Ederica the perfect person to evaluate his skills. The princess hopes that he is a person of great virtue, worthy of the hero's respect. Ederica looks determined, eager to see for herself if his abilities are real or just a bluff. Back in the present, Horace asks Ederica if she really wants him to go to the palace underground. She confirms that she wants to see his abilities for herself in the magic power room. He asks if this is an official request, and when she says yes, he calmly agrees. Langia pops up excitedly, asking if she can come along to watch. Ederica looks at her with a slightly annoyed expression. As they walk through the palace, Horace remarks that there aren't many places in the basement that would have what he's looking for. Langia asks him what he means. He explains that he is searching for the power source for the mana pipes, a term Ederica doesn't recognize. He explains that they work like an electrical grid, powering magic tools like lights and stoves. A diagram shows how monster coins are converted into energy that is distributed throughout the city. Ederica is impressed, and Langia confirms that Horace is in charge of maintaining this entire system. Ederica then reveals her true motive. She planned this as a test of his skills with magic tools. She tells Horace that giving her an explanation is the bare minimum, warning him that she won't be easily deceived. Her eyes burn with intensity as she declares that she will be the one to judge him, all for Princess Lucia's sake. Horace just lets out a small laugh, which shocks and offends Ederica. He smiles, saying her serious declaration sounds very youthful, which only makes her angrier. Flustered, she tells him she'll show him around, but warns him not to mess anything up. They arrive in a massive industrial room, and she points to the main power unit for the entire city. She challenges him to get the massive, silent machine running again. He confidently agrees, saying he's worked on similar systems before. He asks if it's just this one unit, but she scoffs, telling him not to compare their grand system to any other. Horace inspects a gauge and confirms that the magic supply has completely stopped. Ederica is annoyed, asking how he couldn't have noticed the power was out from his mansion. Langia explains that their mansion has its own power source, which surprises both Ederica and Horace. She adds that Terrace also did some maintenance on their private teleportation hub, leaving Ederica speechless at their level of skill. Ederica can't believe it, muttering that it's incredible they have their own power grid already. She begins to suspect that Horace might just be a boastful master taking credit for his talented students. But Horace just cracks his knuckles, ready to get to work and find out for himself. He opens a panel, revealing the machine's core, a series of long, thin metal rods. Ederica pulls out a jar, explaining that the core is made of a special iron that conducts magic. She offers him a special powder to test the magic flow, though she warns him it can be unreliable. Before she can finish, Horace gently blows on one of the rods, unleashing a huge cloud of dust. He asks if she said something as she and Langia cough and choke on the dust. He comments on how filthy the core is, and Ederica retorts that cleaning it is his job. She decides to show him how it's done, using her own magic to gently clean the surface of a rod. Langia watches as the pitch-black rod slowly begins to shine under Ederica's magic. Ederica explains that the rod was originally gray, and the best she can do is restore it to that state, though ideally it should be white. She sighs, admitting that a full restoration is impossible once it's this badly damaged. She gestures for Horace to try, but he just stands there. He calmly tells her that she will be the one to do it again. She explodes with anger, furious that he is giving her orders when she is the one in charge. Both Horace and Langia gently encourage her to try again, and she reluctantly agrees. She grumbles to herself, feeling like he is looking down on her. But as she begins, she lets out a small gasp of surprise. Horace has placed his hands over hers, guiding her and amplifying her magic. A brilliant light flashes from the rod, brighter than anything she could create on her own. She feels an incredible surge of power flowing through her. She stares in disbelief at the result, while Horace and Langia burst into laughter at her expression. The part of the rod they touched together is now a perfect gleaming white. She frantically grabs Horace, demanding to know how he did it. She touches the perfectly restored rod, completely amazed. She has never seen anything like it and has no idea how he accomplished such a feat. He simply tells her to try again, promising to walk her through the process. Langia watches with a proud, knowing smile. Horace begins his lesson, explaining that magic always seeks stability and the key is to guide it, not force it. He tells her to imagine the rod as she wants it to be, but not just to picture it turning white. She closes her eyes and chants, "Turn white," but he corrects her, telling her she must command it. A bright light glows from her hands, and Langia cheers as the rod becomes even whiter than before. But then, it shatters into pieces. Ederica stares at the broken shards, muttering that it makes no sense. Horace pats her on the back, telling her it wasn't a bad first try. She bursts into tears, threatening to sue him, but he just asks who she plans to sue. Langia comforts her, saying she understands the jealousy, as her master is just that amazing. Ederica is shocked when Horace correctly guesses that it took her 5 years to master her own, less effective technique. Langia proudly boasts about her master's power, but Horace just smiles, saying it's something like that. Ederica, crying with frustration, vows to watch his every move and learn everything he knows. She points at him, declaring she will steal his technique, and he just praises her ambition. That night, under a starry sky, the story shifts back to the palace library. Princess Lucia finds Ederica and asks how the investigation went. She finds her friend completely silent, surrounded by books. She gets closer and realizes Ederica is fast asleep, snoring on a box of her creations. An aide explains that Ederica came back suddenly and began making preparations. The princess looks at the piles of intricate parts, wondering what her friend is up to. The aide says that Ederica has been incredibly fired up, working harder than ever before, and somehow her skills have improved dramatically in just one day. The princess smiles, guessing that she must have seen something truly amazing from Horace. A maintenance worker enters to give a report on the still offline power grid. Across the room, Ederica suddenly jolts awake from her nap. The princess remarks that it's the most peaceful she's seen her friend sleep in years. The aide agrees that she must have witnessed something incredible. Ederica suddenly leaps to her feet, shouting, "Victory is mine!" as if she's just won a great battle in her sleep. The princess just smiles, happy to see her friend so inspired. Deep underground, the maintenance crew stares in awe at the fully restored, glowing power core. Princess Lucia's eyes sparkle with amazement as she looks at the perfectly functioning machine. Later, Ederica and the princess watch a carriage with new bearings speed along a road. A knight confirms it's not only faster, but is also carrying 30% more cargo. Another knight celebrates, realizing this will significantly reduce their transportation costs. Ederica knows there is usually a limit to how much you can improve such technology. Horace, standing nearby, simply tells her that she did well. He explains that improving transportation is crucial for a nation's power. He remembers his time in the Diamante Kingdom, where he had to transport massive amounts of supplies for refugees. Ederica realizes he is an expert in logistics, and Princess Lucia asks about his office work. The princess remembers what Langia said at the World Conference. She recalls the mention of 500 worker golems, a number that makes Ederica spit out her drink in shock. Horace explains that the golems were necessary because so many of the refugees couldn't work. His team not only provided food but also developed advanced carriages to transport it. Ederica looks at him, finally understanding the true scale of his accomplishments. Princess Lucia then points to another carriage race taking place. This time, the carriage with the new bearings is falling behind another one. Ederica gives Horace a smug look, but he tells her there is no trouble. He explains that the new bearings have almost eliminated friction, making the carriage feel lighter to the horses. The horses are confused by the strange sensation, surprised by how easy it is to pull the heavy load. Horace says it's just a matter of them getting used to the new technology. Princess Lucia and Ederica agree, deciding to let the horses run to get accustomed to it. In a forge, blacksmiths are still marveling that Horace created the equipment to produce these bearings in just 1 hour. Ederica studies his complex designs, unable to comprehend his genius. He simply says he has studied many different things. He explains that a golem master is a blend of 3 different fields: earth magic, magical tool creation, and alchemy. The princess and Ederica are amazed, knowing that mastering even one of those fields is a lifetime's work. Horace explains that he reads all kinds of books, believing that seemingly unrelated knowledge will one day connect. He tells Ederica that creating something new isn't so hard if you know all the necessary elements from the start. She agrees that new technology is a combination of knowledge, but it's hard to know what you'll need ahead of time. Horace states that people who complain about wasting time are just people who lack proper planning. The princess teases Ederica about her poor grocery planning, and Ederica tells her to be quiet. Horace notes to himself that the princess isn't afraid to speak her mind, even to another royal. Princess. Lucia smiles warmly at Horace, telling him that there's no need to be so formal. She says he can just be himself because it's easier for everyone that way. Horace finds this strange. Ederica explains that the elitist attitude he had to deal with in the Diamante Kingdom is rare in their country. She mentions being surprised by the different cultures she saw when studying in other nations. Horace is intrigued and asks her to explain what she means. Ederica recalls her studies. She was most surprised that in other kingdom schools, nobles and commoners were taught separately. But in her country, everyone is placed in the same class together, which is unusual. She continues, explaining that this system helps the nobles of her country understand the struggles of poor families, not just as an idea, but as real knowledge. Horace thinks about the arrogant nobles from the Diamante Kingdom, who had never heard of commoners' problems. He agrees with Ederica that things are very different elsewhere. Ederica explains her theory. When noble children grow up surrounded only by other nobles, it has a significant impact on how they see the world. For example, she says if they only ever see other wealthy children, they assume that having fancy, expensive meals every day is just a normal part of life. But if a child from a poor family is sitting in the same room, the wealthy children would see that not everyone lives like them. They'd see others getting by with simple, cheap lunches. Back in the present, Horace listens to her thoughtful explanation and agrees, realizing she makes a good point. Nearby, one of the soldiers remarks that this sense of community and understanding must just be part of their national character. Ederica changes the subject. She looks up from her notes and asks Horace a question that's been on her mind. She asks him if the technology he uses isn't a bit old-fashioned. Horace doesn't seem bothered. He closes his eyes and calmly agrees that, yes, it's probably old. Ederica looks at him expectantly, waiting for him to explain more. His expression becomes serious. He explains that he has a role model, a man he admires greatly as both an adventurer and a golem master. His sudden change in tone catches both Princess Lucia and Ederica by surprise. He pulls out an old, well-kept book with an intricate design on the cover. Ederica asks him what it is. Horace explains that it's an autobiography written 100 years ago by the very man he was just talking about. Princess Lucia gasps with excitement, realizing it's a real book of adventures. He tells them the book contains the records of his hero's journeys across vast mountains and details the many incredible inventions he created as a golem master. Ederica smiles, finally understanding. So this legendary figure is the person her new acquaintance admires so much. Both Ederica and the princess try to grab the book to look at it, but Horace quickly raises it out of their reach, teasing them. Horace holds the precious book carefully, explaining that it would be a disaster if it got accidentally torn. Ederica is insulted by his lack of trust. With a mysterious smile, Horace reveals the book's greatest secret. It's filled with hidden ciphers. Ederica gets very excited and squishes Princess Lucia's face, both of them curious about the secret codes. Horace continues, his voice low. If you decode them. The mood suddenly becomes dark and serious. He reveals a shocking truth from the book. 2,000 years ago, the world was stolen and plundered by 5 mysterious individuals. Ederica doesn't understand what usurped means. The princess, however, focuses on the threat, asking how these 5 can be defeated. Horace reveals the book's final secret. To defeat these ancient enemies, the power of a golem master is required. The 2 girls look at Horace with dawning realization. Ederica can't believe it. She realizes that the reason Horace possesses such incredible skill as a golem master is because he is following the path laid out in this ancient text. Horace gives them a sharp, knowing look. He says he has explained enough, and they should now understand the importance of his work. But Ederica points out a problem. If these 5 people are from 2,000 years ago, that means they have been alive for an incredibly long time. Horace decides it's time to leave, but Ederica is shocked he would walk away in the middle of such a serious discussion. As he turns to leave, Horace pauses, as if he's just remembered something important. He turns back and gives Ederica some advice. If she truly wants to become even more skilled, she needs to find her own source of admiration and inspiration. Ederica looks at him with wide, curious eyes, quietly repeating his word. Admire? He explains that the world is filled with a long history of innovators and adventurers. He tells her she should explore these stories and decide for herself what inspires her. He looks out into the distance, telling her that magic has limitless potential. In the end, what she can achieve all depends on her own choices. His words light a fire in her. With a new sense of purpose, Ederica clenches her fist and shouts, "Got it!" The princess encourages her friend to follow his advice. Ederica puts on a smug face and says she'll consider it if she can find the time. Horace just smiles to himself and walks away, leaving the 2 to their playful banter. As he departs, he tells them to call him if there are any problems with the new bearings. They happily shout back that they will. The story takes us to the entrance of the Kinsekai Great Vein, a huge structure built into the side of a mountain in the capital city, Lapis. We learn that this is a massive dungeon. When monsters inside are defeated, they drop high-quality metals, making it a popular spot for adventurers. Inside, adventurers are preparing for their journey into the depths. Guards patrol the busy entrance hall, keeping an eye on the many adventurers. A well-dressed nobleman named Golem from the Diamante Kingdom looks on with disgust, complaining about how loud and common the adventurers are. His companion reassures him, suggesting the crowd is just excited to get a glimpse of Golem's famous holy sword. Golem proudly rests a hand on the hilt of his holy sword, which he calls Guard Might. His followers gather around, eagerly pleading with him to show them the legendary weapon. Golem loves the attention and laughs heartily, agreeing to give them a look. As he prepares to draw it, the crowd murmurs with excitement. It's not every day you get to see a real holy sword. But soon, a different rumor starts to spread. 2 adventurers excitedly discuss the news that the hero, Langea, has just entered the dungeon. Golem's followers immediately lose interest in his sword. They start gossiping that with the hero here, it could be the biggest treasure haul in history. One of the adventurers clarifies that she isn't here for treasure. Apparently, she's here to train with her mentor, which surprises the other man. The adventurer is completely shocked by this revelation. Golem, enraged that he's been ignored, violently grabs the adventurer. He shouts at him, furious that he would speak so highly of a commoner hero. The adventurer's friend demands the commotion, shouting, "Let's go!" Guodal follows with a sinister grin, promising that he is about to show everyone something very interesting. A large crowd gathers on a balcony overlooking a stone arena, eagerly waiting for the training to begin. Down in the arena, Langia and Holus face each other. The crowd is surprised to see that Holus is only using a plain wooden sword. Langia apologizes to her master for the large crowd. He reassures her that it's fine, as he was the one who agreed to a public demonstration. She looks surprised, telling him she always thought he was a very private and secretive person. In the crowd, people whisper about the old Demon King's power to control men. They say that once you caught his eye, it was all over. Langia ignores the whispers and takes her fighting stance, her expression focused and serious as she prepares to begin. Holus watches her, his own expression completely calm and unreadable. Langia takes a single step forward, and a wave of awe ripples through the crowd. Holus stands perfectly still, his simple wooden sword held at his side. Above his head, a heavy chained weight hangs from the wall, part of the training setup. But before the fight can even begin, Langia stops dead in her tracks, her eyes wide with shock. Guodal laughs loudly from the crowd. He mocks Holus, asking if this man is really the hero's mentor and calling his simple stance something a beginner would use. He smirks, suggesting that if she learned from such a weak-looking man, her own title as a hero must be a sham. Langia ignores him and tells her master not to worry about the heckler. She asks him to please continue the training. Guodal's own followers, annoyed by his interruption, start throwing things at him and telling him to get lost. They want to watch the hero train, not listen to him complain. Guodal is furious. He can't believe how many people actually believe the absurd story that a commoner could defeat the Demon King. He screams in frustration, calling the entire situation absurd. For the first time, Holus turns his head slightly, his sharp gaze locking onto Guodal in the crowd. Guodal draws his glowing holy sword. He declares that he, a noble and the wielder of a sacred weapon, will personally expose Holus as a fraud. But as he swings, Holus calmly intercepts the powerful holy sword with his simple wooden one, stopping the attack as if it were nothing. Holus turns to Langia, confused by the nobleman's bizarre behavior. She simply explains that his motives are very simple. One of his own followers explains that Guodal is just throwing a tantrum. He's furious because he believes the upper class was supposed to be the one to defeat the Demon King, and he feels like the commoner hero stole their glory. Guodal overhears this and angrily tells them to stop their nonsensical chatter. He turns his rage back on Holus, shouting that a weak man like him could never have trained someone capable of defeating the Demon King. He accuses them of spreading false rumors, claiming the hero probably just ran away, or that the Demon King is simply hiding somewhere. He raises his holy sword high, preparing to strike Holus down and screaming for him to feel the power of a sacred weapon. Holus doesn't even lift his sword. He just glares at the nobleman and says a single cold command: "Move it." Instantly, the pommel of Guodal's own sword flies off the hilt and smacks him right between the eyes. The force sends him flying backward across the arena, where he lands in a heap, completely knocked out. His followers cry out his name in shock, unable to believe what just happened. Guodal groans on the ground, completely dazed and defeated. Holus turns to Langia and calmly continues his lesson, explaining that magic power always seeks a state of stability. He explains that if you focus your own magic into your eyes and glare, the surrounding magic in the air becomes intimidated and tries to move away all at once. This rapid movement of magic drags the air with it, creating a powerful pressure wave. He explains that he just used that pressure to knock the nobleman out. He looks at the defeated nobleman and says that for someone like him, he doesn't even need to use a sword or cast a spell. A simple glare is more than enough. The crowd erupts into cheers, finally realizing that the hero's mentor is no ordinary man. Langia thinks to herself that when this intimidation technique is used, it usually creates a color that matches the user's personality. However, her master's attack was completely transparent, which means his power is on a whole other level. She is in awe. Her master just defeated a holy sword wielder with nothing more than a glare. In a sun-drenched training yard from long ago, the hero Langia beams with admiration for her master, Horace, declaring his power is everything she expected and more. But her expression hardens with resolve. This time, she will hold nothing back. She charges forward in a blur. He raises a hand. Her attack is effortlessly swatted aside. The force sends her staggering backward, her breath stolen from her lungs as she stares in shock at the man who hasn't moved an inch. Horace calmly asks her what's wrong, explaining that if she can't even get close to him, there is simply no point in trying to make her any stronger. But she refuses to give up. With a cry of pure defiance, she grips her sword and prepares to charge again. She lunges with all her might. His hand moves like lightning. He catches the flat of her blade. Her attack is stopped cold. Langia stares in utter disbelief at his impossible feat, while he simply comments on how light her sword feels, reminding her he had warned her of this in a letter. Horace then explains that even with the Demon King gone, new battles are always on the horizon, and he tells his greatest student that her skills have grown rusty from the long years of peace. But she isn't discouraged. Instead, a fierce smile spreads across her face as she asks in awe just how much stronger her master has truly become. He looks away, slightly embarrassed by her intense praise, and offers a quiet, humble apology. Horace then invites her to attack as much as she desires, reassuring her that they have all the time in the world to train and bring her skills back to their absolute peak. Her face lights up with pure joy and unyielding determination as she eagerly accepts his challenge. He watches her with a soft, encouraging smile, proud to see her legendary fighting spirit burning so brightly once more. Langia silently acknowledges that her master's strength remains an unreachable peak, a goal that is still impossibly far beyond her own. But a confident smile touches her lips as she makes a silent, unbreakable vow to herself. She promises that one day, she will be strong enough to stand by his side as a true equal, and perhaps even to finally surpass him. The scene shifts to a dark night outside a luxurious inn, where an angry voice echoes from within, berating a foolish and arrogant son. Inside, the nobleman Guodol kneels before his father, Count Imodade, who furiously demands to know what his son has done. Guodol tries to defend his actions, reminding his father that he was only acting on the Count's own bitter complaints about the so-called heroes. But the Count scoffs at his pathetic excuse, revealing the devastating consequences of his son's arrogance. Their family is now in debt for 20,000 gold coins to the heroes themselves. Count Imodade explains with rising fury that this sum is 100 times their family's entire annual budget, a debt they must now repay since the war is officially over. Guodol, ever the fool, suggests a simple solution. They just need to force the heroes to admit they lied about defeating the Demon King. The Count's rage boils over. He shatters his wine glass against the table. He roars at his son, reminding him that the entire World Conference officially recognized the hero's victory, making his idiotic plan utterly impossible. Guodol desperately argues that their noble status and holy sword should be enough to get help from the king, but his father reveals that Guodol's reckless actions have ruined their only chance to negotiate. The Count spells out their inescapable doom, explaining that the royal family's annual support is barely enough to cover a fraction of the interest on their massive debt. Guodol looks to his family's holy sword, his last hope, only for his father to add that even owning the blade costs them a fortune in fees to the church. Count Imodade continues his bleak assessment, explaining that even the powerful Shinachika church is in debt to the heroes and is squeezing money from nobles just to survive. The full, crushing weight of his failure crashes down on Guodol, and he covers his face in utter shame. His father delivers the final truth. The entire world's economy now runs on the heroes' gold, and Guodol just picked a fight with their true leader. He breaks down completely, his arrogance finally shattered by the overwhelming weight of his despair. In a fit of rage and regret, he slams his fist on the windowsill, unable to bear what he has done. His father turns to leave the room, calling out to his disgraced son one last time. But Guodol is already gone, fleeing from the catastrophic mess he created. Meanwhile, Horace walks alone through a dense forest, his mind focused on his own goals, far from the petty squabbles of nobles. He pauses for a moment, thoughtfully examining a piece of rare ore he's foraged from the earth. He considers venturing deeper into the nearby dungeon next time, searching for even more valuable materials for his secret work. Suddenly, a voice commands him to stop, A sword is at his neck. The attacker demands he order Langia to erase the Immodiad family's debt. Horace doesn't even flinch, simply sighing at the pathetic and predictable attempt at an ambush. The hooded figure steps from the shadows, and Horace calmly speaks his name. Gwodel. The nobleman is stunned, demanding to know how Horace could possibly know who he is. Horace glances back, explaining that the powerful and distinct aura of the holy sword gave him away instantly. Gwodel rips off his hood, his face a mask of desperation and fury, and prepares to make his demands. He lunges forward, declaring that as the son of a count from the world's greatest nation, this is not a threat, but an order. He grabs Horace by the shoulder, shouting his full name as if it holds any real power over the man before him. Horace calmly states that while his students might be kind enough to simply burn the contract and forgive the debt, he pauses for a moment, his eye narrowing with a cold, hard light. He explains that the money was not a gift, but was earned through the blood, sweat, and tears of his students as they fought their way to the Demon King. He remembers their long and brutal struggle, and he clarifies that to erase that debt now would be a profound insult to their incredible sacrifice and accomplishment. But Gwodel screams that a commoner's duty is simply to obey the orders of a noble, his pride blinding him to reason. Horace looks back with pity, reminding the foolish nobleman that the heroes he despises were once just humble adventurers, people of the land. The nobleman's face twists into a sickening grin as he argues it's the hero's own fault for surviving their quest and thus having to repay their loans. Horace has finally had enough of this disgusting logic. He says one word: stop. Gwodel shouts back, utterly confused, insisting that he is the one giving the orders here. But then he realizes with a jolt of pure horror that his body is frozen, completely and utterly paralyzed. As Horace calmly walks away, he begins to explain a fundamental principle of magic and the true nature of power. He reveals that the holy sword floods its wielder with unstable magic, and with a simple, intimidating command, he can disrupt that flow, rendering his opponent helpless. He tells Gwodel that someone with so little inner strength and magical pressure is utterly incapable of standing against a true Golem master. A massive, ethereal fist of pure energy materializes before Gwodel, who can only beg for Horace to wait. Horace coldly reminds him that pain is a harsh but effective teacher, and that fools who refuse to listen must be taught through force. He tells the terrified nobleman to simply take the punch and accept his punishment without resisting. He moves in. A blur. The punch connects with devastating force. Gwodel is launched into the sky, his scream echoing as he disappears over the horizon. Just then, Langia rushes outside the mansion, calling for her master, having sensed the powerful aura of the approaching holy sword. Horace stands calmly as the sword falls from the sky and embeds itself perfectly in the ground right before him. Gwodel lands with a comical splash in the nearby pond, and Langia correctly identifies the move as the legendary Golem Punch Iron Fist punishment. Tiaris appears beside her with a cheerful smile, reassuring Langia that their master had everything completely under control from the very beginning. Horace examines his gloved fist, explaining that due to secret modifications he's made to his own body, even a normal punch from him now carries the unstoppable force of a golem. Langia asks if Gwodel's pathetic insults bothered him, but he simply brushes it off, saying he's used to countless complaints from his thankless time in the capital. He admits that if he let every little piece of nonsense get to him, he would have gone insane long ago, surprising Langia with the sheer scope of his old burdens. Tiaris explains the rigid social structure of the Diamante Kingdom, where only nobles worked in the castle, effectively silencing the common people. Horace adds that this all changed during the war with the Demon King, when commoners were finally allowed to serve as staff for the first time in history. Langia realizes that having commoners in positions of power made it easier for other commoners to bring their problems forward without fear. He clarifies that he understands and respects legitimate complaints, like those about taxes, as all people have a right to be heard by their leaders. But he also remembers the political agitators and extremists who would twist social issues to incite chaos, making any real progress impossible. Langia listens with a sympathetic smile, understanding just how difficult his past must have been, while he admits he often wished he could just smack the worst of the troublemakers. Just then, a friendly voice calls out, and they turn to see a woman and her children approaching with a gift of kindness. The woman offers them a basket of fresh fruit, a simple but heartfelt thank you from the townspeople for his help. Terrace graciously accepts the basket and a box of sweets from the little girl, remarking on how wonderful the thoughtful gesture is. She mentions to Langia that the mansion has been filled with such gifts lately, all from the grateful and happy citizens of Lapis. Horace reveals the real reason for their gratitude, reminding his student Ederica of the maintenance work he performed on the city's central power supply. He explains how cleaning the mana pipes dramatically improved the city's magical efficiency, drastically reducing the energy cost for everyone living there. Because of his selfless work, the palace was able to announce a massive and unexpected tax cut, bringing joy and relief to all the citizens. As the family waves goodbye, Horace finishes his story, explaining that these gifts are the people's way of showing their sincere and direct appreciation. Langia watches them go, realizing with a warm feeling that the people are using the money they save from the tax cuts to live better, happier lives. Tearis adds that the Dragonstone Kingdom is incredibly transparent with its national finances, which builds a powerful bond of trust and goodwill with its people. Langea catches sight of Gwodol still floundering pathetically in the pond, and the stark difference between the grateful commoners and the entitled noble has never been clearer. She notices that her master still doesn't seem happy, and he admits his surprise at the vast difference in national character between the two kingdoms. He states that his cooperation with this kingdom is purely for his own goals, a pragmatic and honest truth that Langea quietly accepts. As he walks inside, she understands something profound and sad. In all his years of loyal service to the Diamante Kingdom, Horace was likely never once thanked for his work. Langia and Terrace reflect on his lonely past, realizing he has become so used to not being praised that he no longer expects it, and that hiding his true power was a necessary burden to avoid becoming a target. They look at their new home, finally understanding the harsh and solitary life their master was forced to lead for the sake of an ungrateful world. The scene shifts back to the grand, imposing castle of the Diamante Kingdom, a magnificent symbol of now crumbling power and influence. Inside, King Barzil is just now realizing the terrifying truth. A single, brilliant man, Horace, had been holding his entire nation together all by himself. The chaos begins as a guard bursts in without knocking, shouting about an urgent problem and startling the already stressed king. He frantically reports that the kingdom's food transport carriages are broken, and there are absolutely no spare parts to fix them. Before the king can even process this disaster, another official barges in, yelling that the city's essential magical devices are all failing at once. King Barzil sighs in utter defeat, realizing the kingdom is so broken they can't even find paper for reports. The consequences of firing Horace are absolute and final. The capital's comfortable way of life, supported by a network of magical devices, is now hanging by a thread. That system is now failing, with streetlights flickering across the city, a clear sign of the terrible state of things since Horace, the sole maintenance expert, was forced to leave. King Barzil despairs, knowing the noble-born alchemists who replaced Horace are skilled only in flattery and rhetoric, not in the actual work needed to save their kingdom. He knows true skill isn't born from empty words, and his kingdom is now paying the ultimate price for his noble's arrogance and incompetence. He realizes the situation is even worse than he feared. Not only are there no spare parts or manuals, but Horace likely took them all with him in his magical dimensional storage. A guard confirms his fears, reporting that the commoners are growing restless and on the verge of rioting, proving the kingdom's prosperity was a fragile illusion maintained only by Horace. The king gives a cold, dismissive order, telling the guard that the commoners should solve their own problems among themselves, showing how little he cares for his people. The guard stammers in protest, desperately trying to explain that they simply don't have enough skilled workers among the commoners to handle the cascading crisis. With a menacing glare, the king threatens to make the guard work 10 times harder, like a golem, immediately silencing him with pure fear. The king sighs, picking up his quill to desperately try and manage the unfolding, kingdom-wide disaster all by himself. He knows that above all else, the food deliveries must continue, for if they stop, The kingdom will lose its last shred of dignity and its title as the world's greatest nation. But another official bursts in with an even greater emergency, reporting that the nobleman Gwodel has foolishly confronted the hero's powerful and mysterious mentor. The official explains that Gwodel demanded his debt be erased and was instantly and humiliatingly knocked out for his insolence. The king's eyes widen in sheer terror. He can't believe that idiot has just tried to make an enemy of the most dangerous man in the entire world. He shakily asks what the hero's side demanded in return, and the official's ominous pause before answering tells him everything he needs to know. The king calculates the horrifying cost, realizing the interest on the Imedeid family's debt alone would completely consume their entire noble budget for the year. He reflects on their wasted potential, how they relied on the empty status of a holy sword instead of investing in their lands and their people. In a moment of decisive action, the king orders 20,000 gold coins be taken from the royal treasury to pay the debt immediately. He continues, stripping the Imedeid family of their titles and assets before exiling them to the frontier, a shocking but necessary punishment. Yet, the king remembers a personal debt of honor he owes to Gwodel, a memory from a dark time long past. He recalls the catastrophic labyrinth outbreak 12 years ago, a crisis where he put Gwodel through immense and unforgivable hardship. He admits that without Gwodel's efforts back then, he would have lost his position as crown prince, and so he settles this debt now, as a matter of personal honor. With renewed and hardened resolve, the king vows that he will never again let the foolish pride of his nobles bring his kingdom to the brink of utter ruin. Above the castle, birds fly in a peaceful sky, completely unaware of the storm of politics and crippling debt raging below. The king stares at the receipt for the 20,000 gold coins, the sheer amount of money making his stomach churn with profound anxiety. But his brief respite is shattered as another breathless official rushes in, shouting that there is another urgent, unfolding crisis. The king turns, his face a mask of pure exhaustion and dread, asking what new disaster has befallen them now. The official stands before massive, ornate doors, his voice trembling as he describes the chaos and madness erupting on the other side. The king learns that the sons of other noble families, foolishly inspired by Gwodel, are now attacking hero community facilities, threatening to plunge the nation into open war. He furiously demands to know what the reports say, desperate for answers as his kingdom spirals out of control. He is told the nobles felt emboldened because Gwodel drew his holy sword, an act of war, and was let off with only a single, merciful punch. The king is baffled. The matter was supposed to be settled, but he now sees the punishment was far too light, a deliberate and calculated move by his enemies. The horrifying truth of the scheme is finally revealed. The hero community had ensnared the other arrogant noble families by making them co-signers for the kingdom's massive war debt. The nobles, now trapped and facing financial ruin, felt provoked and lashed out, believing the commoner heroes were trying to usurp their rightful power. The king pictures it perfectly, a common hero effortlessly stopping an arrogant noble, the exact scenario that would ignite their pathetic and fragile pride. He finally understands the brilliant, ruthless trap. The heroes provoked the nobles, forcing the king to pay their debts and ruin them, all while appearing to be merciful. He slams his fist down, roaring in helpless fury at being so completely and utterly outmaneuvered by his enemies. He orders a full investigation into the conspiracy, but the official informs him they have already discovered the source of the plot. The king grabs his official by the collar, his eyes blazing with unrestrained rage, and demands that he speak the truth now. The official reveals a study session held by a duke's family was used to manipulate the other nobles, a level of short-sighted foolishness the king can barely comprehend. The king clenches his fist, disgusted by these fools who only see the surface of things and never understand the deep, dangerous currents of power. He tries to explain that Gwodel's case was a special exception, resolved peacefully only because of the king's personal history and the mentor's unexpected mercy. His body trembles with rage as he realizes the other nobles foolishly thought they could act with the same impunity and expect the same leniency. The official sweats under the king's intense glare as he is asked the one question that matters now. What is the total debt? The answer is a death sentence for the kingdom. 1 billion gold coins. The king collapses in his chair, utterly defeated. His nation's entire yearly budget is a tiny fraction of that, a debt that is fundamentally impossible to repay. He snaps his quill in two, accepting his terrible fate. He, the king, must now bow his head and beg for a solution to save his people. But his official asks the obvious, impossible question. Where could they possibly find that kind of money? The king's composure finally shatters, and he lets out a raw, animalistic scream of anguish, hurling his chair across the room as his kingdom crumbles around him. Back in the tranquil garden of Horace's mansion, Langia reads the news of the attacks, wondering if the Diamante nobles have completely lost their minds. Terrace calmly pours tea, revealing that she predicted this exact outcome the moment the kingdom foolishly agreed to pay the first small debt. Langia remarks that people who are smart but lack imagination often create the most interesting chaos, though she doubts the nobles are even smart to begin with. Terrace agrees, sipping her tea. She notes that while they may possess some low cunning, their perspective on the world is hopelessly and fatally narrow. As Langia reads the shocking headlines about the kingdom turning against them, she asks Terrace for the exact amount of the new, staggering debt. Terrace confirms the astronomical sum of 1 billion gold coins, an amount she knows with absolute certainty the Diamante Kingdom can never hope to pay. Langia leans back, a thoughtful and dangerous expression on her face, as she ponders how they should best resolve this self-made crisis for their own benefit. Terrace offers a brilliant suggestion. Instead of demanding money they don't have, they should take something the kingdom possesses that they want. Langia's first thought is of her master, considering a demand for rare and exotic metals for his secret golem-making projects. But then her eyes fly open as a much more clever, much more devastatingly perfect idea strikes her. She winks, a mischievous grin spreading across her face as she announces her brilliant plan. They will take the massive, one-of-a-kind golem-controlling antenna from the capital city. Terrace is surprised, asking if such a powerful and unique device really exists within the Diamante capital. Langia explains its incredible power, revealing that it was the very tool Horace used to single-handedly manage and maintain the entire city's complex infrastructure. She knows that building a new one would be nearly impossible, and taking the original would be a crippling blow to the kingdom and a priceless gift for her master. Terrace immediately grasps the strategic genius of the plan, realizing the antenna is a masterpiece of lost technology that Horace deserves to have back. The two women share a look of perfect, cunning understanding, their brilliant minds completely and utterly in sync. They high-five with joyous laughter, united in their mission to claim their prize and settle the score with the foolish kingdom once and for all. In the heart of the crumbling Diamante kingdom, King Barzil holds a single letter. His hands tremble with the weight of its words. He closes his eyes, a heavy sigh escaping his lips, for he knows this is a critical moment that will decide the very future of his nation. His loyal aide Razor stands before the grand desk, addressing a ruler who looks completely overwhelmed by the crushing weight of his duties. Razor speaks with a firm, concerned voice, admitting to his king that he strongly opposes giving in to the hero's audacious demand. King Barzil leans forward, questioning Razor's logic and asking if he truly understands the dire stakes detailed in the letter, which Razor confirms he has read. Razor explains his worry, acknowledging that while giving the golem-controlling antenna to the hero community promises relief from their debt, the cost may be too high. The king bluntly states the harsh reality of their situation, explaining that even their entire national budget for a year could not cover the debt, and they can barely afford a fraction of the interest. With a sharp, intense gaze, King Barzil asks why they should not seize this one opportunity to save themselves from total financial ruin. He rises and walks toward the window, looking out over his troubled city while Razor stands silently beside a stack of old books. Razor offers a theory about the hero's master, Horace, speculating that he must have sacrificed his control range for greater precision, making the antenna invaluable to him. The king listens intently from the window, his chin resting thoughtfully on his hand as he encourages his aide to continue sharing his insights. Razor continues his warning, explaining that if they hand over the antenna now, it changes everything and erases any hope of Horace ever returning to their kingdom. King Barzil quietly agrees, understanding the deep sacrifice he is about to make by giving up the one thing that might bring their greatest asset back. He gestures to a stack of ancient books on alchemy and magic, asking Razor if he has read the historical records, which his aide confirms he has. The king nods, acknowledging that it is a common theory to think Horace used the antenna as a relay to compensate for a lack of range. Razor adds that this would perfectly explain why Horace was so active within their borders. He was only here because the priceless antenna was located in their country. With a heavy heart, the king accepts this painful truth, realizing the antenna was likely the only thing keeping a man of such talent in their service for so long. Razor looks down with a hint of sadness, confessing that a small part of him had always hoped they could one day invite Horace back to the castle where he had worked for so many years. He looks up with a new concern, asking if the kingdom's other nobles have also read the letter from the hero community. King Barzil turns back from the window, still holding the letter, and asks his aide what the self-serving nobles had to say about the demand. Razor hesitates, his expression troubled, as he simply states that the antenna is not currently being used, and then asks the king to just tell him what they said. The king covers his face in frustration, quoting the nobles' arrogant words. They believe they are just handing over useless trash and that commoners are easy to fool. The image of a glowing, ancient book flashes in the king's mind, reminding him of a lesson from his father. A ruler must gather information and trust what he sees, not what he is told. As the king seems lost in thought, the lesson continues to echo. A true ruler must surround himself with subordinates who give accurate, truthful reports. He clenches his fist as a surge of resolve runs through him. Only now does he fully understand the wisdom of his father's words, which he had once dismissed as idealism. Razor is taken aback by the king's sudden change in demeanor as his majesty powerfully announces that they will accept the hero's demand. The king's eyes are filled with a new, sharp determination. He gives the order to prepare the antenna for immediate transfer. With newfound authority in his voice, he declares that they will abandon the possibility of Horace ever returning, stating that this is his final, unchangeable decision. He turns to Razor with a cold look, adding that while he is saving the kingdom, he has absolutely no intention of guaranteeing the foolish nobles their peace. The king points forward, his voice booming through the throne room as he commands Razor to make a full list of all suitable dungeons in the country, for he plans on imprisoning every last one of the arrogant nobles. Razor bows deeply, accepting the shocking but necessary order without a single question. He understands his king's resolve. As he leaves, Razor reflects on the king's incredible transformation, realizing that just a few days ago, His Majesty was a completely different man. A brief memory shows the king happily surrounded by sycophantic nobles, laughing and accepting their empty flattery. Razor walks away with a small, proud smile, thinking to himself that the king is one of those rare people who can achieve greatness, if only they actually try. Suddenly, he stops in his tracks as the king calls out to him from behind, his voice softer now. The king, standing by the window once more, asks if Razor believes Horace is angry with them for not properly appreciating his lifetime of work. Razor reassures his ruler, explaining that Horace seemed satisfied after only punching the count's son, even after a holy sword was drawn, and is likely not the type to hold a grudge. The king looks out the window thoughtfully, realizing that the truth is even sadder. Horace likely has no reason to be interested in them at all. Razor notices the king's lingering melancholy and gently asks if he still has any regrets about how things have turned out. The king fidgets awkwardly, unable to fully hide his feelings as he insists that it's nothing to worry about. Razor recalls a memory of Horace at a busy counter, patiently enduring an endless stream of complaints from commoners, and he understands that anyone would eventually grow tired of such thankless work. The king summarizes his new understanding. If he apologizes and promises to act as a proper ruler, their already strained relationship with Horace might not get any worse. He then slumps over his desk in defeat, letting out a groan as he fully accepts that they have no choice but to give up on ever having Horace back. Razor watches his king, who now seems so small and defeated, thinking that after a brief moment of coolness, he now resembles a maiden worrying over a lost love. The king suddenly looks up, his eyes wide with an impulsive new idea, as he suggests sending an extra bonus from the underground vault along with the antenna. Razor is confused by the idea of a bonus, but the king quickly dismisses the thought and tells him he may go. As the door closes, Razor peeks back in with a knowing smile, sensing there is more to his king's plan. Alone again, the king is filled with regret, admitting to himself that as a royal, he completely failed to properly reward Horace for all of his efforts. He reasons that they are just returning things to how they should be, and if this action leads to the country's growth, they can eventually repay all their debts. The king strokes his beard, a cunning glint in his eye as he muses that depending on how this mysterious bonus is received, things could become very interesting indeed. The scene shifts dramatically. Deep inside a vast icy cavern, a lone figure, Horace, stands on a rocky ledge, exploring the depths. He looks over his shoulder, his expression calm and focused as he carefully navigates the dangerous, untrodden dungeon. Suddenly, his eyes widen in alarm. Something is coming. He dodges just in time. A sharp, metallic creature flies past. He lands safely on a lower ledge, looking up at his attacker. A strange, bird-like monster made of sharp metal screeches as it swoops down from the ceiling, its form crystalline and deadly. A faint, fiery aura appears around Horace's head. He is ready for battle. The metallic bird dives with incredible speed, its sharp wings cutting through the air as it closes in for the kill. Horace stands his ground in this vast, unexplored territory, noting that his usual aura doesn't seem to give him much of an advantage here. He observes the creature, thinking that since it's made of metal, it must be using magic to fly, and it would be easier if he could just overpower it directly. But as the monster attacks again, Horace realizes his usual methods are not working as well as he had hoped against this unique foe. The bird lets out a piercing shriek, unleashing a wave of pure energy. Horace watches as his aura has a small effect, but it is clearly not enough to stop the creature. From a small pouch, he pulls out a compact cylindrical object. It is one of his creations. With a flick of his wrist, the object transforms into a large gun-type golem, and he decides it is time to give this new weapon a try. The metal bird dives once more, but this time Horace takes aim with his powerful golem gun. He fires a massive blast of energy that sends a powerful recoil through his arm. The blast hits the bird head-on. It shatters its metallic body with a final cry of pain. Shards of the defeated monster rain down through the frigid air. Standing on the ledge, Horace watches as the smoke from his successful shot finally clears. He catches a small, glowing cube, the monster's core, and remarks that the creature was actually weaker than he had expected. He pockets the glowing core, adding another valuable material to his growing collection. With a large bag now full of ores and monster parts, he smashes another large crystal to gather even more rare minerals. He slings the heavy bag over his shoulder, satisfied with his haul. It is time to head back. Back in his mansion's warehouse, the hero Langia finds her master, Horace, sorting through crates of ore, deciding which to keep and which to discard. Langia watches as Tiaris brings in a tray of tea, explaining that Horace has been working ever since he returned and should be resting. Horace looks up from a piece of ore he is examining and explains that he is simply sorting things into what he needs and what he doesn't. He holds up a glowing crystal, clarifying that with a highly developed appraisal skill, one can easily tell the difference in quality between two seemingly identical items. To demonstrate, he shows two crystals that look the same but have different quality ratings, one with 3 stars and one with only 1. The alchemist Ederica worries that the ores she gathered might have contained low-quality junk, but Horace reassures her that any minor impurities can be easily fixed with her skills. He points to a tray of rare ores, explaining that these can only be found in the dungeon's middle layers and are crucial for enhancing materials from the even deeper levels. A small map of the dungeon appears as he complains that reaching the deeper paths is a major hassle, and the chances of finding rare items are incredibly low. Langia asks if the new ore is beyond Ederica's ability to refine, but Horace explains that being a golem master is a hybrid of earth magic, alchemy, and tool creation. Because he is a jack of all trades, he admits that he isn't a true specialist in the kind of alchemy required to manipulate certain rare metals. He takes a much-needed break from his work, picking up a cup of tea that Tiaris has prepared for him. He takes a sip and announces that he is nearly finished sorting and will leave the rest to them, just as Langia suddenly remembers something important. She asks him if he is interested in the bonus metal that has just arrived for him. Horace looks up from his cup, his curiosity piqued by the strange word bonus. The scene shifts to the mansion's beautiful yard, where Langia explains that the Diamante Kingdom agreed to send the antenna in exchange for reducing their debt. A neatly wrapped package sits on the table between them, which Langia explains is a bonus that was delivered ahead of the main shipment. Horace casually tells Terrace that he has absolutely no intention of ever managing that country again, no matter what they send him. Langia explains their reasoning, believing that if his control range could be extended, he could create even better golems, as no ordinary item can boost a master's power. The three of them sit together on a couch, looking at the gift, as Horace admits that the antenna was indeed very convenient for his work. Langea leans forward, wondering why the kingdom wasn't using such a priceless and powerful tool for themselves. Horace explains that for the antenna to function properly, the magic power flowing through it has to meet extremely specific, ancient standards. He continues, clarifying that the king magic didn't meet those standards, and since they didn't understand the requirements, they could never make it work. Terrace asks if this means the antenna wasn't actually made by the kingdom. Lying back comfortably, Horace reveals that the antenna was supposedly created by Zetsuya Oration, a legendary maker of super-ancient magic tools, and the kingdom just happened to find it by a twist of fate. Langia laughs at the irony, finding it a waste that the kingdom possessed such a treasure they couldn't even use, while Horace thinks they are making a big deal out of this bonus. Langia mentions that the package was stored in the castle's secret underground vault, and at these words, Horace suddenly freezes in shock, asking if such a room really existed. He begins to tremble with a look of anguish, realizing this is something he has always wanted to find. Seeing his reaction, Langia and Terrace eagerly encourage him to open it. With trembling hands, he carefully unties the ribbon and lifts the lid of the ornate box, revealing its contents. Langia leans in close, asking what it is that has him so excited. Horace stares in disbelief, whispering that he is sure they sent it without any idea of its true, world-changing worth. Terrace looks puzzled by his intense reaction, asking if this is just another item that he doesn't need for his work. No, Horace says, his eyes wide with excitement. He explains that this single incredible artifact will advance his golem research by 10 whole years in an instant. Langia and Terrace gasp in utter astonishment, their mouths wide open in shock that the kingdom would give away something so unbelievably valuable. Horace lifts the object from the box, an intricate, ancient book made of a rare metal. He marvels at the kingdom's ignorance, knowing that finding this on his own would have been a matter of pure luck. He explains to his students that his research has many different paths, and he had always avoided this specific one because it required this seemingly impossible-to-find item. A wide, joyful grin spreads across Horace's face. He realizes King Barzil must have sent this without understanding its true power, which makes it the most perfect gift he could have ever received. Langea, still amazed, asks if it is really that special. Horace explains that if the kingdom had appreciated his work and offered him this very item after the war, an image flashes through his mind of him bowing gratefully to the king. He admits he would have enthusiastically accepted and continued working for them without a second thought. Terrace asks him seriously if this means he might consider working at the castle again. His smile vanishes instantly. He firmly states that there is not a chance, as his opinion of their arrogant people has not changed. Besides, he adds, being tied to the castle would prevent him from exploring the great ore vein of Kinsekai, so he would have eventually left them anyway to pursue his own goals. Langia nods in understanding and asks if he is now ready to officially write off the Diamante Kingdom's massive debt, to which Horace, holding the gift, agrees. A sly smile appears on Terrace's lips as she imagines that once the debt is gone, the foolish nobles will quickly become arrogant and overconfident again. Langia's expression turns sharp and confident. She declares that if those nobles forget the power and respect that the title of hero commands, she will be happy to remind them. Horace raises an eyebrow, asking his two cunning students if they are planning to use the news of the cancelled debt as bait to lure foolish nobles into a trap. Langia gives a cheeky smile, admitting that she learned such clever tactics from her master, and Horace can only chuckle, unable to deny it. The next day, a letter arrives at the Diamante Castle announcing that the kingdom's debt is completely erased. King Barzil is in such disbelief that he has to read it 5 times to be sure. At the gate of a hero community building, 2 people watch as a new hero arrives, commenting that another one has shown up today. The newcomer is a woman in practical armor, and the observers note that she must be here now, that the cleanup after the Demon King's defeat is finally over. A child's eye peeks through the gate's bars, watching a bizarre scene unfold and asking a nearby man what is happening. A portly, extravagantly dressed nobleman is strangely licking a communication device on the gate while a guard shouts at him to stop. The nobleman leaves in his fancy carriage, as onlookers gossip that the hero community is just as chaotic as all the rumors say. The new hero who witnessed the strange event simply turns and says the nobleman's actions are approved, letting his provocation go unchallenged for now. The nobleman's face is shown in a slimy close-up as he licks the tube, whispering his desire to make all the heroines his mistresses. Back at the mansion, Horace reads the morning paper. Ligeia comments that none of the nobles have acted foolishly yet, and Horace replies that it is still too soon. Just then, the new hero from the gate bursts into the room, calling out Ligeia's name in a panic. An annoyed Ligeia reports to Horace that a duke from the Diamante Kingdom is outside, demanding they all come with him to be his mistresses. Horace pats his student's head to calm her down. With a weary sigh, he remarks, "That was fast." Outside the mansion, Duke Ashton is yelling impatiently, demanding to know what they think they will gain by making a man of his importance wait. He puffs out his chest and bellows his full name. Ashton Requotenides, head of a powerful ducal family, certain that his name alone commands respect. Horace and Ligeia stand calmly at the gate. Ligeia coolly informs the Duke she has never heard of him, while Horace simply asks what he wants. Ashton puts on a slimy smile, explaining that because the girls are so beautiful, he has decided to invite them to his mansion to be his mistresses. Ligeia's face contorts in disgust as she flatly refuses his offer. The Duke is utterly shocked by her immediate rejection. Onlookers whisper among themselves, wondering if this fool really thinks he can control the world-famous hero. As Ashton screams about the consequences of refusing him, he then insults their entire nation, calling it a poor kingdom only capable of producing metal, a direct insult to the origin of Ligeia's legendary sword. Ligeia's eyes narrow in fury at the insult to her sword and her new home, and she clenches her fist, wishing she could teach him a lesson. Duke Ashton just laughs, taunting her and saying he is eager to see how long her stubbornness will last. He then begins a loud, nonsensical speech about the duty of citizens to repay debts, using this twisted logic to justify his outrageous demands. Ligeia challenges him, asking if he plans to lend money to their princess, while Horace points out that there's no issue if the loan is repaid instantly. Ligeia leans in, asking if he intends to charge an impossibly high interest rate, but the Duke just scoffs at her, calling her an uneducated commoner. Duke Ashton smugly reveals his true goal. He will use his right as a creditor to force Princess Lucia to pay his family an impossible sum of 100 million gold coins. Truly explains that the heroines themselves will serve as the payment, their value set at 100 million, imagining them already trapped and his property. Ligeia is completely baffled by his ridiculous scheme, letting out a sharp, incredulous, "Huh?" She argues back, asking if she can just prepare the money and pay him off right away, but Horace calmly tells her that the Duke's plan is not that simple. The truth dawns on Ligeia. The Duke is using the idea of a debt to force an illegal contract on Princess Lucia, demanding non-monetary payment. Horace explains the grim reality of the law, where a debt can be used as a right to force a debtor into agreeing to terms, which the Duke smugly confirms. However, Horace adds the crucial detail that such a right cannot be exercised without a valid reason, revealing the fatal flaw in the Duke's entire plan. Suddenly, two of the Duke's guards run up to him, proudly calling his name. They present crates filled with precious metals, reporting that they stole them from the hero community's warehouse and could have taken more. At that moment, another group of heroes arrives on the scene, angrily demanding to know who these thieves are. Horace, with his arms crossed, coolly states that he would also like an answer to that very same question. The Duke smugly orders his men to load the stolen goods onto his carriage, declaring that everything the heroes own will soon be his. Horace takes a determined step forward as Ligeia shakes her head, disgusted by the Duke's shameful and irredeemable methods. A powerful, fiery aura begins to radiate from Horace, and Duke Ashton gasps as the very air around them grows heavy with pressure. Horace speaks, his voice low and dangerous. explaining that he is only in this country for convenient access to the great ore vein of Kinsakai. The Duke begins to choke and hack, struggling to breathe under the immense, suffocating pressure of Horace's ore. Horace looks down at the terrified nobleman, his eyes glowing with power as he asks if the Duke's actions mean he is deliberately trying to get in his way. The pressure intensifies, forcing the proud Duke to his knees as he cries out, unable to comprehend this commoner's overwhelming power. Ashton's guards rush forward, shouting at Horace to release their master, but the Duke remains pinned to the ground, sweating and groaning in agony. The crowd of onlookers watches in stunned silence as the arrogant, blustering nobleman is publicly and completely humiliated. One opportunistic citizen even pulls out a magical camera and begins taking pictures of the scene, much to the anger of the Duke's men. Langia whispers to Horace with a grin, suggesting that this humiliating event might just make the front page of tomorrow's newspaper. She then looks at the pathetic Duke and adds with a smirk that, after today, everyone will certainly remember his name. Ashton can only groan on the ground, his face a mask of shame, fury, and utter defeat. Finally released, the Duke scrambles away, screaming that they will all regret this day, while Langia shouts for him to leave the stolen metal behind. Another hero urges Horace to chase after them as the worried townspeople look at the crates of metal the Duke tried to steal. A young woman steps forward, asking Horace to clarify what he meant about it being convenient that this country holds the rights to the great ore vein. Horace stops and turns, confirming that is indeed what he said. A flashback shows Princess Lucia as the woman asks if the convenience is because her family, the rulers of the land, are in charge. Horace explains a hidden secret. Deep inside the great ore vein lies another secret dungeon that requires a special key to enter. He reveals that the key is not an object, but a bloodline, the ancient Yatsushiro Key clan, to which Princess Lucia's family belongs. Langia is shocked, having never heard of this Key clan, while in the memory, Princess Lucia just smiles as if it is common knowledge. A map illustrates that the city of Lapis is situated near the Great Ore Vein, which houses the hidden dungeon ruled by this ancient clan. Horace concludes that if Princess Lucia were to lose her authority, he would lose his only way to access the secret dungeon and its priceless treasures. Langia finally understands his true motive. He wants to avoid placing any unnecessary burden on the princess, so he is protecting her rule for his own goals. The scene cuts to Duke Ashton's carriage racing away from the city in disgrace. Inside, the Duke is seething with rage, complaining that the few crates of metal he stole are not nearly enough to make up for his public humiliation. He clutches an oar, fuming that his perfect plan to use a fake debt to control the heroes fell apart simply because they refused to be intimidated. He curses the foolish commoners who do not fear his authority, but he also knows his small group of guards is no match for a team of powerful heroes. A new, more sinister plan forms in his mind. If he cannot take on the heroes directly, he will go after their protector, Princess Lucia, at the Kaostan Palace itself. At the palace gates, the royal guards are shocked as the Duke's entourage approaches, demanding to know who they are. The Duke's men announce their master as the Prime Minister of the Diamante Kingdom, warning the guards not to interfere. With a simple command of "Go," Duke Ashton orders his men to storm the palace. His armored soldiers kick down a heavy door, charging violently into one of the royal chambers. Princess Lucia and her loyal aide look up in shock as the intruders burst into their private room. The Duke's men quickly surround the two women as Ashton smugly informs the princess that he is here to collect on his debt. The princess's aide, a fierce young woman, steps forward and tells him to stop fooling around. The guards easily push her back as she struggles, demanding to know who they are. Duke Ashton plops down onto a luxurious sofa, introducing himself as the Prime Minister of the mighty Diamante Kingdom. He leans forward with a cruel smile, asking if they are truly refusing to hear his generous offer. The aide shouts back defiantly that if they accept his terms, their country will become nothing more than slaves to the Diamante Kingdom. The Duke laughs, declaring that the world is ruled by strength, and a weak country that only produces metal is already a slave. The aide argues that his one-sided demand is illegal, but Ashton coolly replies that there are no rules in the World Council to stop him. She begins to look worried, asking if he really thinks he can get away with such blatant tyranny. To show his power, the Duke casually steps on a framed picture, crushing it as he says, "Words are clearly not enough to make them understand." The aide screams in outrage at his blatant act of disrespect toward the royal family. Before she can act, two guards point their swords directly at her throat, silencing her. The aide stares down the blades not with fear, but with a confident, knowing smile, as if she knows the Duke has just made a fatal mistake. Duke Ashton points a condescending finger, sneering that he won't repeat himself. This country is only good enough to be a slave. Princess Lucia whispers her aide's name, her voice trembling with worry as she watches her friend being threatened. Ederica turns to her princess, calmly acknowledging that their country has indeed been taken advantage of throughout its history. But then her eyes narrow into a fierce glare. She declares with fiery conviction that if the Duke thinks that will always be the case, he has another thing coming. One of the Duke's guards laughs mockingly at her defiance, but his taunts are cut short by a tired sigh from the doorway. Everyone turns to see Horace leaning casually against the doorframe, remarking that this tense atmosphere doesn't suit a royal office. Langia appears at his side, her face a mask of fury as she warns the invaders that their barbaric words and drawn swords are a declaration of war. The Duke and his guards are completely stunned. They stammer in disbelief, shocked to see the famous hero and her master appear before them. Horace and Langia step coolly into the room, and Horace calmly explains that they are here because the Duke stole their oars. The Duke quickly tries to regain his composure, pretending he was just checking on the tense situation at the palace and happened to find them here. He huffs, waving a dismissive hand as he claims absolute authority and warns the commoners not to get carried away. The air crackles with tension as the two sides face off, their feet planted firmly on the palace floor. The Duke boasts that with a single order, his soldiers can surround the entire capital, believing this is the definition of might and authority. He points an angry finger at them, screaming that they are just powerless commoners who should not dare to go against him. Horace closes his eyes, his voice calm but filled with power as he explains that true authority is meant to protect what is important, even if it means abandoning what is right. He opens his eyes, his gaze like ice. He declares that people who start wars and enslave others are not rulers. They are simply criminals. Enraged, the Duke screams at his guards to attack the man who just called him a criminal, and they charge forward with their swords raised. Horace doesn't flinch. He simply tells Langia to take Princess Lucia and retreat to safety. In a blur of motion, Langia scoops up the startled princess and gracefully leaps high over the charging guards. "What about me?" Ederica cries out in surprise as she is left behind in the chaos. Horace now stands alone, facing the three armored soldiers with a calm, analytical expression. One of the guards sneers, underestimating his opponent and remarking that he doesn't seem to be putting up much of a fight. His eye flashes. He informs them that what is about to happen is simple retaliation. He moves with blinding speed, slamming a powerful elbow into the first guard's side, throwing him back with a cry of pain. Ederica screams as Horace effortlessly strikes down the second guard right in front of her. He casually flicks his hand as if shaking off dust, clearly unimpressed by his opponents. Ederica squeezes her eyes shut, unable to watch the one-sided beatdown as Horace continues his fluid, powerful attacks. With one final, devastating blow, he sends the last soldier crashing to the palace floor. A heavy silence fills the room. Horace kneels for a moment among the defeated guards. The fight already over. Duke Ashton stares, his jaw hanging open in utter disbelief, muttering about what he just witnessed. He quickly recovers his arrogance, laughing loudly and boasting that Horace has just assaulted his men, giving him the right to have him executed. "Realized what?" the Duke yells, trying to regain control, but then he stops, his eyes widening in confusion as he sees his men. One of his guards slowly gets to his feet, checking himself over in amazement. He has not a single scratch on him. Horace stands up with a cool, knowing smile, explaining that he instantly healed their wounds after he hit them, leaving no traces but all of the pain. A guard clutches his stomach, groaning in agony despite having no visible injuries, proving that there will be no evidence of the assault. The Duke is completely bewildered by this impossible technique, screaming at his men to kill Horace anyway. Horace stands casually, goading the terrified soldiers by reminding them of the Duke's own words about killing someone from a slave country. The guards hesitate, glancing nervously at the man who defeated them so easily as Ederica watches, her heart pounding. In a flash, Horace moves again, delivering swift, painful strikes to the guards' stomachs that cause them to double over and choke. He grabs one guard by the throat, apologizing that he can't let him vomit on the palace floor and has magically prevented it, telling him to suffer for a while. The Duke backs away, pointing a trembling finger as he stammers, "What are you?" Horace turns to face him, his eyes sharp, and calmly answers that he is just a Golem master, but one far beyond the level of 3 mere soldiers. In a pathetic act of defiance, the Duke draws a small, decorative sword, whining that he doesn't accept this outcome. Horace cracks his knuckles with a smirk, telling the Duke that if words won't work, then perhaps his body will understand. But before Horace can move, a fist flies through the air. Ederica lands a powerful punch right on the Duke's jaw, knocking him out cold. Horace looks down at the unconscious nobleman and sighs, deciding that he probably shouldn't just leave him there. Standing at the palace doors, he concludes that the best course of action is to return the Duke through his own embassy and write an official letter of protest. Horace sighs at the complexities of politics, annoyed that even after being attacked, a letter is their only recourse because they are a small country. Later, back at the mansion, Princess Lucia finds it hard to believe what happened, while Ederica is still surprised at how easily Horace handled the soldiers. Horace, relaxing on a couch, comments without looking up from his paper that, for him, such a feat is as natural as breathing. Langia looks at her master with shining eyes, happily asking for confirmation. Horace glances at the newspaper, his attention caught by a headline about a duke from the Diamante Kingdom issuing an apology. Langia leans over, amused that they used the photo of the duke's public humiliation, and then asks Horace if he thinks Ashton has learned his lesson. Ederica speaks up with a worried expression, predicting that the duke will definitely come back for revenge. Langia is surprised, but Ederica explains that in the Diamante Kingdom, the nobles always retaliate when their pride is wounded by commoners. A memory of another arrogant noble plays out, showing their inability to forgive any slight to their pride. Ederica sighs at how narrow-minded they are, and Princess Lucia adds that people only grow when they learn to forgive, not just restrain themselves. Terrace smiles knowingly, remarking that this pride is likely the reason why they never seem to mature properly. Ederica wonders if they aren't afraid of being beaten again. But Horace explains that people in power are quick to forget pain because they can simply eliminate anything that annoys them. As he speaks, an image of the Duke standing before his army appears. Horace predicts that those same men will suffer the same fate in just a few days. Just as he predicted, Duke Ashton stands before the hero community's base, declaring that the hero has disrespected him and cannot be allowed to get away with it. He points toward the building and orders his soldiers to capture everyone inside, promising them a share of the spoils. The Duke schemes to himself, planning a cowardly attack on the hero while she is sleeping. Suddenly, his soldiers cry out in pain and collapse around him as a powerful force sweeps through them. The Duke himself is hit by the immense pressure, gasping as he recognizes the familiar, terrifying feeling. At the entrance to the building, Langia stands alone, explaining that after facing so many idiots, she has been doing some thinking. A terrifying, dark aura surrounds her as she says that perhaps it would have been better if the Demon King had actually invaded the capital. The image of the Demon King's influence looms behind her as she explains that those controlled by him offer absolute, unwavering loyalty. Her aura flares even brighter. She notes that even after the Demon King was defeated, his minions remained loyal, leaving no option but to restrain or kill them. In an instant, she is in front of the Duke, grabbing him by his collar and lifting him effortlessly as she snarls that she doesn't care about right or wrong. Her eyes glow with a terrifying light as she warns him that if he gets in her way, she will make an example out of him. The Duke's face is a mask of pure terror, sweat pouring down his face as he whimpers helplessly. With a dismissive push, Langia sends him stumbling backward, commanding him to hurry up and disappear. As he scrambles away, she adds a final, chilling threat, allowing him to leave with all his limbs intact. For now. The Duke flees in terror, not daring to look back at the source of his humiliation. Langia watches him go, deciding that it is time to call for an urgent World Council meeting to solve this problem for good. The Duke and his defeated soldiers lie in a pathetic heap on the ground as Langia walks away, telling him to look forward to what comes next. Back in the Diamante Kingdom's throne room, Razor rushes in, looking frantic and calling for His Majesty. King Barzil puts his head in his hands as Razor delivers the terrible news about Duke Ashton's actions. The report continues, detailing how the Duke declared the Dragonstone Kingdom a slave nation and surrounded the hero's base with his private army. The king groans as Razor finishes, explaining that the hero defeated them and has now sent a letter. The king moans that he doesn't want to read it, but he is told that reading is not optional. Razor pleads with him not to be like that and forces the letter into his hands. The king's expression shifts from dread to wide-eyed shock as he reads the unexpected contents of the letter. Razor watches his king's reaction, noting that the hero seems to have a more discerning eye than they had thought. The king slumps in his throne, explaining that instead of demanding he take responsibility, she is calling for a special World Council meeting. A sly look appears on the king's face as he reveals her strategy. She is hosting an audience and has invited everyone who has a problem with her to attend. Razor is stunned by the hero's bold and unexpected plan. The king clasps his hands, understanding her brilliant move perfectly. He realizes she is planning to deal with all of her enemies at once. Elsewhere, a council of nobles and world leaders convenes, discussing the hero's strange invitation to a World Council meeting. They gossip among themselves, noting that many people expected someone of higher status to be the one who defeated the Demon King. King Barzil listens as another lord scoffs that those high-status people did nothing, and in the end, only results matter. Another noble chimes in that many of them didn't even try to fight the Demon King, a truth the king cannot deny. The king rereads the letter, focusing on a key line where the hero stated that she doesn't care whose principles are right. Razor interprets her words, realizing she is inviting even those who have done shameful things, and he marvels at how open-minded she is. The king stands by the window, sighing that he doesn't want to believe a 17-year-old girl is more mature than him, but acknowledging that people only grow when they learn forgiveness. The king recalls a painful lesson from the past, when religious leaders nearly took over, which led to the creation of the current World Council. Razor concludes that the true purpose of the meeting is to show the arrogant nobility what kind of person the hero truly is, and the king agrees. An intimidating image of Langia looms over the terrified nobles, a clear sign that she plans to make the great families tremble in fear. Horace explains the world's power structures, a triangle of divine, blood, and adventure, representing religious nations, ruling bloodlines, and powerful adventurers. In his throne room, King Barzil predicts that the upcoming audience is going to be absolute chaos, and Razor agrees without a doubt. The king slumps in his chair with a heavy sigh, the weight of the coming political conflict pressing down on him. He looks up at Razor with a flicker of hope, asking if he thinks the hero's master, Horace, will also attend the meeting. Razor turns to a bookshelf, deep in thought, and tells the king that if he were in Horace's place, he would definitely go. Razor imagines Horace's perspective, believing he will go but might be hesitant about what he will find there. Horace thinks to himself, concluding that he will probably go to the meeting, but he still has his reservations about the whole affair. The king wonders aloud if it's possible for someone like Horace to lose all faith in the world, and Razor suggests a look at their own kingdom's foolishness makes it easy to understand why. Razor explains his worry. If Horace gives up on everyone, he will likely protect his new home but abandon any other land he deems not worth saving. However, Razor adds, I can't deny that there are some people who hold an unwavering belief that the strong must protect the weak. He recalls Langia's words, realizing they imply that her master's incredible powers are not just for protecting people. A memory surfaces of Horace being swarmed by ungrateful commoners lodging shameless complaints, despite all he had done for them. Razor imagines the angry mob shouting at Horace, demanding that he protect them simply because he has been given great power. He asks the king if a man in that position, faced with such ungratefulness, would truly still want to protect those people, no matter what. The king adds another painful truth, pointing out that even if you do protect them, you won't even hear a single word of gratitude. Razor is struck by a sudden, profound realization as he finally understands the king's point. The king explains his newfound wisdom, stating that simply rewarding achievements is a cold transaction, and there is simply not enough true gratitude in the world for the hero who saved it. He clenches his fist with passion, declaring that unless people truly understand that the hero saved the world, its value will diminish. As a grand image of the capital city fills the view, the king finishes his thought. The value of the world the hero saved will only become cheaper. He turns to Razor, his expression serious, to emphasize just how much meaning this next meeting holds for the future. He explains Langia's bold move. By inviting all her critics, the best possible outcome would be for no one to show up at all. Razor knows the hearts of the arrogant nobles too well and states with certainty that this is an impossible hope. The king turns away, looking out the window with a sad expression, sighing at what a cheap world they live in. But then, his face hardens with resolve. As the leader of the world's greatest country, he must do something to make the value of this world rise. The day of the World Council meeting arrives. Langea stands before an assembly of the world's most powerful nobles, her expression like stone. She begins her address, listing the terrible crimes of Duke Ashton and expressing her shock at learning he was the Prime Minister of the Diamante Kingdom. She finishes her account and challenges the room full of nobles, demanding that they speak now if they have any rebuttals. Immediately, the hall erupts in protest. Two nobles leap to their feet, shouting that they will not grant her any authority just for defeating the Demon King. Another lord yells that commoners like her exist only to serve the nobility and should be using her power to get on their good side. The room dissolves into a chaotic mess of accusations, with nobles calling her a criminal and a fraud who must be punished. Langia closes her eyes, patiently listening to their insults as they demand she marry the Crown Prince of Diamante to secure their power. The nobles shout that her master has a duty to share his secrets for the good of the world, not hoard them for himself. A hand raises, and a single powerful word cuts through the noise. Silence. It is Langia. Her eyes blaze with fury, and a powerful aura radiates from her as she declares that they are all way too selfish. She reminds them of Ashton's crimes, invading their home and calling their country slaves. She points out that after hearing of these transgressions, their only response was to prove their own selfishness and ingratitude. Her fist clenches with anger. Their reaction clearly shows that the World Council has no intention of apologizing or taking responsibility. Langea points directly at the nobles. She declares that her power was granted by her master, and with it, she saved the world, then asks what any of them have ever achieved. Her words hit them like a physical blow. The nobles fall silent, one slumping onto the floor, forced to admit the truth. Nothing, nothing at all. Langia's gaze is sharp as a blade as she states that those who have achieved nothing have no right to go against those who have. Suddenly, a new voice joins the conversation. It is King Barzil, questioning their audacity to defy and try to control the very people who protect them. Langea's power flares, her eyes glowing as she prepares to unleash her full wrath on the ignorant bloodline. But before she can act, King Barzil steps forward, calmly asking her to hold on to her faith in the world for just a little longer. Langea is stunned by his sudden appearance and demands to know who he is. The king stands tall, his presence commanding the room as he introduces himself. "I'm Barzil Diamante." He greets her formally, reminding her that they met at a ceremony long ago. Langea dismisses him, stating that this meeting is for her enemies, and the official council for rulers is later. The king smiles, calmly stating that he is also here to file a complaint. He explains that he thought inviting only her enemies was a waste of an opportunity, as he also had something he wanted to say to the hero. The crowd murmurs in confusion, but the king clarifies that he is not there to agree with them, but to speak his own mind. Langea's eyes narrow into dark, intimidating slits as she challenges him to go ahead. King Barzil turns to address not just Langea, but everyone, including her team and her master, Horace. Then, he does the unthinkable. The king of the world's most powerful nation bows deeply, thanking them from the bottom of his heart for saving the world. Langea's eyes widen in complete shock. This was the last thing she ever expected to witness. King Barzil turns to the stunned nobles, reminding them that while they gave the heroes a reward, they forgot the most important thing of all. He looks back at Langea, and with deep sincerity, He says the one word they all forgot: gratitude. The other nobles gasp, shocked and deeply ashamed by their king's words and actions. Langia looks at King Barzil with newfound respect, admitting that she is not so petty as to ignore someone's personal growth. However, she still has one crucial question for him. Why is he only showing this gratitude now, after all this time? The king meets her gaze, his own filled with regret, and acknowledges that she has every right to ask that question. He confesses their collective failure, admitting they have been disrespectful and have forgotten the true meaning of a hero. However, he declares, turning to face her fully, I shall show you a possibility. He closes his eyes and concentrates, remarking on the fearsome nature of the pressure ability she uses. Spreading his arms wide, the king unleashes his own powerful aura, attempting to replicate her power. A massive wave of pressure slams into the nobles, forcing them all to their knees in pain and shock. Langia instinctively braces herself, amazed that the king can even attempt to copy her unique power. But where the nobles collapsed, Langia stands perfectly still, completely unaffected by his imitation. King Barzil begins to laugh heartily, the pressure disappearing as quickly as it came. He clutches his side, still chuckling at how easily she withstood his power, admitting he didn't expect to win without proper training. Langia watches him, confused by his cheerful attitude, as he looks at his defeated nobles and sighs at how disappointing they are. She tells him that he doesn't seem like the type of person to pull such a strange stunt, and he just smiles. He explains that for a long time, his kingdom's strict traditions and pride forced him to act against his true nature. His expression becomes sincere as he says he would now like to meet her master, Horace, to offer a personal apology. Just as he finishes speaking, a side door opens. Horace, now dressed in a fine suit, steps out, remarking that he couldn't exactly stay hidden after being called out. The king looks at him, surprised but pleased. So, you're Horace. Horace meets the king's gaze, his own expression cool and unreadable, waiting to see what the ruler will do. King Barzil bows his head once more, this time to Horace, and offers a deep, sincere apology for making him work without any reward. Horace simply replies, "As you can see," letting the king know that he has moved on and is doing well for himself. The king looks up, relieved, and asks Horace to please raise his head. A small, genuine smile touches Horace's lips as he admits that he really liked the bonus that came with the antenna. He explains that the priceless gift made all his years of thankless work for the Diamante Kingdom feel completely worthwhile. The king's face softens with relief and understanding. He declares that in that case, there is no longer any debt between them. Langia steps forward, adding that since Horace prefers the Dragonstone Kingdom, they have no problem with him staying there. Horace looks at the king and asks a simple question. Does that satisfy you? The king covers his face with a heavy sigh, confessing that he had hoped Horace would ask to return, but he now vows to make his kingdom strong on his own. Then, King Barzil looks at Horace with a sharp, curious glint in his eye, asking if he, too, would demonstrate his pressure ability. Horace is startled by the strange request, wondering what the king is planning. The king smiles, explaining that a demonstration is worth 1,000 words and would be a much easier way to understand. Horace understands instantly. The king had read the ancient book and wanted to feel true power. With a knowing smile, he agrees. The king's eyes blaze with anticipation. He braces himself and says, "Come!" In an instant, the entire hall is flooded with an overwhelming pressure, a force so immense it dwarfs everything that came before. King Barzil gasps, his body shaking under the incredible force as he struggles to remain standing. Horace looks at the king, who is somehow still on his feet, and admits he didn't think he would be able to withstand it. The king, though sweating and trembling, manages a grin, admitting that even he is surprised. He turns to Langia, his voice filled with newfound humility, and says that this is a world where an ignorant and foolish man can still become a king. But his eyes shine with hope. He tells her that the world she saved holds this possibility for growth, and that their blood still holds so much potential. He reaches his hand out to her, making a genuine plea for her to hold on to her faith in the world for just a little longer. Langia is silent, her expression unreadable as she processes everything she has just witnessed from the changed king. The immense pressure recedes, and the king breathes a sigh of relief, his demonstration complete. Langea finally speaks, her voice soft as she admits her defeat, confessing that she truly felt it would be all right if she just gave up on this world. She opens her eyes, looking at the king who has shown her something new, and admits that he was right to prove her wrong. Horace stands beside Langea, a proud and gentle smile on his face as he watches his student's faith in humanity finally be restored. King Barzil explains the difference between a hero, who is granted a title for their deeds, and a true ruler, who is defined by their very existence and responsibility. Langea bows her head gracefully, her heart full, as she promises to never forget the words of gratitude he gave her for defeating the Demon King. The king smiles warmly, his duty now clear, and excuses himself to decide which dungeons to throw the arrogant nobles into. Horace cheekily offers to send the king the official documents for the dungeons, which the king happily accepts, much to the horror of the listening nobles. Later, the guilty nobles are led away, shouting in protest that they are the ones being punished and that the decision is unfair. They continue to complain, unable to accept that the king is now on equal terms with the hero and that they, as high-ranking nobles, are being disciplined. The protests grow louder as a duke from another kingdom argues he has done too much for Diamante to be thrown into a dungeon. One of the nobles declares that the king is no longer wise and that they must guide him back to the right path. He asks if anyone knows communication magic, and a cloaked figure quietly answers that they do, setting their treasonous plan in motion. The lead noble gives a wicked command, ordering them to send the legendary monster, the Sky Spirit Dragon Guy Gigant, to the Diamante Kingdom's capital. He reveals their sinister plan. The summoning stone is hidden beneath Duke Raquotnides' mansion, and they will use it to take control of the capital by force. Walking through the streets, they justify their horrible actions, claiming that sacrificing the innocent citizens is necessary to guide the king back to respecting them. One noble voices his concern, mentioning that past small-scale experiments with the dragon did not go well. But the leader is confident, stating that this time they will let the dragon use its full power, ensuring they will not fail. Another noble suddenly panics, realizing they are plotting treason right in the open at the World Council's base. Before they can act, the doors burst open and Razor appears with armed guards, announcing that he has intercepted their communication and they are now international criminals. Back at his palace, King Barzil is in a rage, screaming out his window about the endless stupidity of his nobles, while Razor tries to calm him down. The king yells at Razor for being so calm, reminding him of the new threat of Guy Gigant. Razor explains the legend of the monster, a creature from ancient fairy tales that was once slain by a dwarven swordsmaster. The king realizes that with such a powerful monster on the loose, Horace will be forced to act, and just then, a knock sounds at the door. Razor announces that Hero Langea and her master Horace have arrived. The door opens to reveal Horace in his combat gear, and the king calmly gives the order to let them in. The king gets straight to the point, asking Horace if he is going to the capital, which Horace confirms is why he is there. Horace looks at the king and says that there is just one thing he would like to ask for. "What is it?" the king asks, his curiosity piqued. Horace makes his request. He wants to borrow the Diamante Kingdom's underground antenna. The king is surprised, correctly guessing that Horace is planning to use some sort of special golem for the fight. The king explains the official procedure, noting the large amount of paperwork and transport time involved for such a valuable asset. Horace smiles, explaining that since he worked at the castle for a long time, he is very familiar with all the rules. The king nods, understanding that Horace is following the rules to make things easier for everyone involved. He extends his hand, making a simple verbal agreement to bypass the red tape. "Use it as much as you like," he says, and Horace agrees, taking his hand to seal the deal. The king apologizes for his sweaty hand, still worked up from all the excitement of the day. They shake hands, a new alliance formed as the king entrusts the capital's safety to Horace. Horace turns to leave immediately, saying he will go on his own since the paperwork will take time anyway. The king turns to Langea, asking why she isn't going with her master to watch his heroic battle. He looks puzzled by her decision to stay behind, not understanding her reasoning. Langea explains that her view of fighting is very different from her master's, whose methods are efficient but not always what one would call heroic. Meanwhile, in the Diamante capital, the robed cultists gather around the summoning stone in a hidden chamber. They place their hands on the stone, pouring dark magic into it and beginning the ancient ritual. A colossal beam of dark energy erupts from the ground, soaring high into the sky and casting a terrifying shadow over the city. The people on the streets cry out in fear, pointing at the ominous pillar of light and wondering what is happening. High in the sky, a monstrous shape begins to form within the swirling energy. A terrifying dragon's head emerges, its eyes glowing with malevolence. The Sky Spirit Dragon. Guy Gigant has been summoned. The massive beast spreads its wings, descending upon the panicked city as people scream and run for their lives. The dragon opens its mouth, and a blinding ball of destructive energy begins to form. Horace arrives on the scene, seeing the dragon prepare its devastating attack and realizing how dangerous the light is. But someone is already there. A lone warrior known as Deed of Twilight stands firm against the beast as citizens flee behind him. The dragon unleashes a massive beam of energy, but Deed of Twilight amazingly blocks the entire blast with his giant sword. The dragon seems annoyed, as its only instruction was to buy time until the hero's master arrived. Deed of Twilight stands ready, breathing heavily but undeterred by the monster's power. He grumbles to himself, exasperated by the situation. He complains that all the high-ranking heroes are away and everyone else has already evacuated the city. He is furious that he was called in on an emergency, causing him to miss his promotion exam, and wishes they had sent an S-rank hero. I guess they thought an ordinary A-rank Deed of Twilight was good enough, he says with frustration. He glares at the dragon, yelling at it to get down and fight him on the ground. In response, the dragon transforms, its body swelling and changing into a more powerful and demonic form. Its new form is even more monstrous and intimidating than before. Deed of Twilight looks on in disbelief, realizing with dread that this isn't even the creature's final form. High above on a floating platform, Horace surveys the city, relieved to see that the evacuation order worked and the streets are mostly empty. He is impressed that Deed of Twilight is managing to hold the creature back, noting that things are in better shape than he expected. He sees that the hero held the line for a full hour at the cost of his arm and admits that he is tougher than he thought. Deed of Twilight, now badly injured, bravely taunts the monster, telling it to come at him instead of the city. The dragon turns its full attention to the lone hero, accepting his challenge. Horace prepares his golem gun, a cloud of magic puffing from the barrel as he readies his own attack. Deed of Twilight sees him and smiles in relief, glad that the hero's master has finally shown up. Horace fires his golem gun, but the dragon proves to be too fast and dodges the blast with ease. Ha! Deed of Twilight shouts in surprise at the miss. The dragon's massive tail whips around and sends the injured hero flying through the air. Deed of Twilight reaches out, trying to grab something to stop his uncontrolled fall. He lands in a heap on the ground but seems to be enjoying the thrill of the dangerous fight. Horace lands his platform near the dragon, glad to see that no one else has been injured in the chaos. The dragon tries to attack him from behind, but Horace is ready for it. He places a small cube on his platform, explaining that he rushed here at full speed and is not feeling his best. He holds up a card and summons a massive water golem, challenging the Sky Spirit Dragon to a warm-up. The dragon lunges, but Horace easily dodges, his golem gun already aimed and ready. The water golem unleashes a torrent of attacks, striking the dragon with powerful blasts of water as the beast roars in anger. Horace slides back, bracing himself against the force of the dragon's powerful counterattack. The dragon swipes at him with its massive razor-sharp claws. Horace leaps into the air and delivers a powerful, golem-enhanced punch directly to the dragon's face. The punch lands with incredible force, sending a shockwave through the dragon's head as Horace yells in triumph. The punch is so strong that it sends the dragon's entire head flying off its body. The headless creature writhes in agony on the ground. Horace lands, analyzing his performance and noting that his bone golem suit is set to a stable mode, which limits its combat power. He thinks about his strategy, realizing that to increase his gun's power, he needs to draw more from the bone golem, but for now, keeping it stable is his best option. He reflects that there is a big difference between studying ancient records and actually putting that knowledge into practice in a real battle. The dragon's head quickly regenerates, and it prepares to unleash another powerful breath attack. How unlucky, Horace mutters, bracing himself for the incoming blast. The dragon is shocked when its breath attack completely fizzles into nothing, unable to understand what just happened. Horace explains the principle with a small diagram. By suggesting that becoming air is more stable, he can use his own magic to neutralize the dragon's attack. He looks at the confused dragon, telling it not to underestimate humans and the power of knowledge. The dragon tries again, and Horace dismisses the attack as boring, expecting the same result. But this time, the attack is different, stronger and more stable. Okay, that one's actually bad, Horace admits, genuinely surprised. He dives out of the way just in time as a massive beam of energy obliterates the spot where he was standing. He realizes the dragon learned from his punch, figuring out that his physical attack was the key to disrupting its magic. It has now made its breath attack more stable to prevent him from overriding it, and Horace dodges again, annoyed by the troublesome power. He closes the distance and lands another powerful punch right on the dragon's snout. The dragon lets out an ear-splitting sonic scream, and Horace covers his ears, shouting at the sheer volume. The force of the sonic blast is so powerful that it sends him flying backward, even as he desperately covers his ears in pain. The sonic scream hits Horace with the force of a physical blow, sending him staggering back into a wall as he grunts in pain. He falls to one knee as the massive dragon looms over him, its victory seeming certain. But suddenly, Horace floats effortlessly into the air. He has been buying time, and now his preparations are complete. The dragon, enraged, brings its massive claw down in an attempt to crush him. Horace looks up, his eyes wide with surprise at the creature's incredible speed. "Whoa!" he exclaims, narrowly dodging the powerful strike as the dragon's claws slam into the ground. He lands, realizing the dragon isn't teleporting but just moving at an unbelievable speed over a short distance. The dragon doesn't give him a moment to rest, unleashing a barrage of sharp, dark energy projectiles. Horace dodges and weaves through the storm of attacks, clicking his tongue in annoyance. He keeps his eyes on the dragon, anticipating its every move, ready for the next assault. The dragon closes the distance and swings its massive arm, but Horace raises his own golem-enhanced arm to block the powerful blow. From a distance, someone watching the battle unfolds gasps in awe at the sheer power on display. The force of the dragon's attack sends Horace crashing through a building as the dragon swoops overhead. Horace emerges from the dust and rubble, furious. "You bastard!" he shouts, glaring up at the monster. He looks up in confusion as the dragon flies away, surrounding itself with a strange, fiery aura. The dragon flies towards the edge of the city, and Horace sighs, recognizing it as a standard strategy to gain the upper hand. Hovering over the forest, the dragon unleashes a massive beam of energy. But Horace knows it's not the creature's strongest attack. The beam strikes the ground, creating a colossal explosion that engulfs the entire area in fire and light. The smoke clears to reveal two dragons. The first has transformed into its final, most demonic form, and a second, even larger dragon has appeared. Horace floats in the sky, now encased in a brand new, powerful set of golem armor, ready for a test run. He holds up his new, intricate gauntlet, revealing its code name, Deus Ex Machina, God of Machines. Wielding a massive golem sword, he looks at the two dragons with absolute confidence, declaring that their strength does not matter. He knows that with this new power, this scenario already guarantees his victory. He charges forward, his new armor gleaming as he flies directly towards the first dragon. The dragon looks on, its eyes wide with shock and confusion at this sudden, incredible turn of events. A flashback shows King Barzil offering the ancient book as Horace thinks to himself how well the bonus has worked out. He realizes the book was the key, allowing him to switch its function to expand his calculation power and control this complex new armor. The dragon lunges, desperately trying to stop him, but it is too late. Horace is now fully equipped in his Deus Ex Machina armor, a powerful floating suit of golem machinery. Armor's multiple floating arms begin to glow, firing off a volley of powerful energy blasts. Horace notes that he is using the armor before its magic power has fully stabilized. He hovers confidently above the battlefield, adding that even so it is already at nearly full power. He clenches his new golem fist, deciding there is no point in dragging this out any longer. He flies towards the dragon, his glowing sword leading the way, ready to end the fight. The dragon senses the immense power and lets out a roar, preparing for a desperate final struggle. It unleashes its most powerful breath attack, a massive beam of pure destruction. Horace is completely unfazed, thinking that this is all a dragon, without true knowledge, can manage. He raises his massive golem sword high, preparing his ultimate move. With a powerful cry, he unleashes his special attack. Taurus 3! A colossal wave of energy from his sword slices through the dragon's beam and slams into the beast itself. The dragon's body is completely obliterated, dissolving into nothing but dust and smoke. Horace lands on the quiet battlefield, noticing that no gold coins have appeared, as they usually do when a monster is defeated. He walks through the clouds of dust, confirming that there are no valuable ingots either. He stops suddenly, sensing a new, even greater threat approaching. He looks up at the sky with a tired but determined expression. Time for the final round, I guess. A beam of light shoots up from where the second dragon was, and the ground begins to rumble ominously. The second, larger dragon lets out a deafening roar that echoes across the entire land. Deed of Twilight, watching from the city, looks up as the sky quickly fills with dark, swirling clouds. The clouds part to reveal a terrifying sight. The sky is now filled with a massive swarm of smaller dragons. Horace looks at the overwhelming army of monsters and lets out a weary sigh. How lively! The sky turns black as the endless horde of dragons descends upon him. Horace puts a hand to his forehead, annoyed that such high-ranking dragons would resort to a simple numbers strategy against a single human. He raises his powerful golem hand, a new plan already in motion. Well, since you've all gone through the trouble, let me return the favor, he says, as the very ground beneath him begins to shake violently. The earth cracks open, and a colossal shape begins to rise from the depths below. His ultimate creation, the gigantic steel golem orchestrion, emerges, and Horace prepares to command it against the dragon army. Cannons emerge from Orchestrion's arms, charging with powerful, crackling energy. The giant golem unleashes a massive, non-stop barrage of energy blasts into the sky. The explosions light up the clouds as the magic bullets find their targets with perfect, deadly accuracy. The lead dragon roars in surprise as its seemingly endless army is torn apart by the relentless assault. Orchestrion's shoulder cannons fire a massive, continuous beam of energy, wiping out dozens of dragons at once. Horace explains his creation's power. The magic bullets don't require reloading and have no recoil, allowing for a continuous, overwhelming attack. He adds that the golem can even calculate the most precise shooting routes, a feature that surprises even him with its effectiveness. As the dragons are destroyed one by one, he complains that they don't even drop any gold. Horace shouts a new command to his giant golem, telling it to switch to paralyze mode. The main dragon is struck by a powerful, paralyzing blast, its body seizing up as it groans in pain. With their leader temporarily disabled, the smaller summoned dragons lose their connection and begin to fall lifelessly from the sky. Horace knows this is just a temporary solution, and that nothing will truly end until he defeats the main body. The main dragon recovers and charges at him again, ready to continue the fight. Horace stands his ground, unimpressed, telling the beast that such a direct attack will not work. He effortlessly dodges the dragon's clumsy lunge with a simple sidestep. He explains the flaw in the dragon's strategy. By focusing all its power on summoning, its main body is left weakened and vulnerable. As Orchestrion continues its barrage, Horace notices that no new dragons are being summoned from the main body. He looks at the main dragon, which is now gathering all its remaining energy, and asks if it has finally reached its limit. Horace understands. The dragon has given up on its army and is now putting everything into its main body for a final, desperate attack. The dragon lets out one last furious roar, channeling all its remaining power. It unleashes a rain of sharp, dark projectiles in a final, desperate assault. That won't work, Horace declares, completely unfazed by the attack. He raises a single finger and a powerful barrier appears, effortlessly deflecting every single projectile. Horace looks at the dragon, his expression unreadable, and says that it's not like he hates it or anything. But his eyes harden with resolve as he declares that he will use the dragon to achieve his own goal. He rushes forward, his powerful golem armor glowing as he prepares his final attack. He unleashes another one of his ultimate moves. Scorpion the Third! A devastating energy strike erupts from his gauntlet. Deed of Twilight watches from a rooftop, completely stunned, whispering that Horace really defeated the dragon. He shakes, his head in disbelief, admitting that even seeing it with his own eyes, he can't comprehend the unreal amount of magic power being used. He looks at the figure of Horace in the distance, surrounded by the quiet aftermath of the battle, and says with awe, "So that's the hero's master."